All right, it's 6 o'clock. I will call this meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Marty, if you would.
Amy Blackbeard. Here. Michaela Conlon. Casey Reese.
Present.
Jeanette Simonson. Here. Nick Helsted.
Here.
Iftikhar Memon.
Here.
Brad Dobbs.
Here, thank you. And has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
All right, next we have public comment. I have Michaela Lazinski.
What I have to say might be a little lengthy, so I will try to go as fast as I can.
So we have a 4-minute limit.
I will go as fast as I can in regards to my trial. So good evening, members of the board. My name is Michaela Blazinski, and I'm here as a concerned parent to address ongoing issues regarding my son.
Start the streaming. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move items 8.1 and 7.1 into the next spot on the agenda because we have guests here tonight. So I'm looking for a second on that. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, 8.1. Andrea, you guys are up first.
Okay, so hi, I'm Amy Gilbert-Stroud, and I was elected as president of the Student Senate today.
Hi, I'm Andrea Cogswell, and I was elected as secretary of Student Senate today.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
hot off the election.
Not with us today is Lillian Autumn, who was elected VP of Student Senate, and we have yet to elect our 2 other officer positions. So mainly what we're here to do is just introduce ourselves and introduce the Student Senate to the school board. So we are basically student government. We deal with teaching our members kind of how like government or legislature works. We operate on our constitution and a modified parliamentary procedure. So you'll kind of see us throughout the school trying to make some changes and like what we think we can do for the better. Anything else you want to add? Okay, and then this year we also have a new advisor, Ms. Choflat, who has already kind of started to get the ball rolling on our first piece of action that we want to do this year, which she is kind of sending out emails every so often to our like newly 18 students, encouraging them to register to vote, which for our students who cannot vote in this election, we are planning on holding a mock election on November 5th, just to kind of introduce the voting process to people who are probably going to be doing it in the next election. So, anything else?
No, that's about it.
Yeah, if you have any questions, we are free to answer. So,
How many students participate in the Senate currently?
so
Rough idea.
I believe we're around 35 members strong. We are meant to have 1 representative from each district we're advising. So we have representatives from every single grade, every single advising.
I think it's awesome that you guys are doing it. We've obviously had to go through the process ourselves. Is there anything we as a board can do to help support you guys?
I'd say just keep a path of communication open, because I have a feeling that we're probably gonna have to talk to you guys again.
You get to talk to us.
There were several board members that asked if you ever wanted a representative from the board at your meetings, that they would be happy to attend your meetings as opposed to always the opposite and you coming to theirs. So you can take that back to your group and consider if there's a topic on the agenda that you think you'd like some more voices there for, and let me know, we can make that happen.
Absolutely. Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. We have more esteemed guests. We have our language department here tonight.
Sorry, the first time doing this, I didn't know there was mine.
No problem.
I don't know how to turn it on, I'm sorry.
So that's right. Why not? Nicole, you've done it, haven't you? Any principal, grab it, haven't we played?
When you push the button, Justin, does it turn green?
No, it's red.
So if you could speak really loudly, all that microphone does is it makes it easier for the recording to hear. The people in the, it doesn't amplify you in the room, so use your teacher voices and we should be good.
Okay, will do. Good evening. I'm Jenny Rukavina,
And I'm Marco Ravina.
and we teach Spanish.
Yeah.
So our big ideas of all levels are interpersonal communication, interpretive communication, and presentational communication. So we want students, our goal is for students to be able to exchange information in the target language, interpret what they read and what they hear in the target language, and be able to present information in the target language across all levels. So,
and I can talk about this. I think we didn't mention, if you don't know, I teach mostly in the middle school as far as Spanish at this time. So in 7th grade, we have an exploratory program and that they get through their specials. And in the 8th grade, we have a year-long Spanish one as well. So you can see there it says with the high frequency vocabulary in our level 1. So we do level 1 in high school as well as in 8th grade. And some of the things that we do is teach certain highly frequent vocabulary that they can start telling stories, having conversation, and we mainly do the present tense.
And so at the high school level, I have levels 1 through 5. And so we continue building on those very high frequency words and start adding in some more. One thing that we really emphasize with students is being able to communicate, and so understanding point of view, and being able to converse and understand and present information. So we can go to the next slide. And then as we get into the higher levels, we're working across different tenses, so being able to understand and communicate in the present as well as the past and future. And then in Spanish, there are also different moods that students need to understand. So we sort of build on the basics, and things get more complex as we move up through the levels. And the goal is always starting with where students are and trying to bring them along and develop greater proficiency over time.
So this here is an example of what we might do. We have an introduction looking at the basic response. So you can see the example there where a student would learn just a basic phrase such as she or he is happy, and then adding things to become more fluent and more proficient with that. So starting with the basic phrase that we have in response to a question, they can go on. So this kind of mirrors what you might have in a curriculum that's K through 12, ending in an AP class. We don't currently teach AP right now, but we have in the past. And this is kind of the format and the basic format that you'd want to be able to do to be able to write an essay, introduction, response, reasoning with examples, and having evidence, and then supplying examples of that evidence. So it starts right from the beginning with that, and then going all the way through all the levels.
Okay. So our overarching theme right from day one is that we are Black River Falls, and these are all the things that we do in class. So we respect each other, we listen, we look, we participate, and we speak. And so right from the beginning of the first day of level 1 all the way through all the levels, we talk about how these are the things that we do in order to be good classmates for each other, and also good habits for getting the most out of really any class, being engaged in learning.
And if you're interested in grammar at all, this is actually plural first person. So right away we start with plurals and have them talk about we rather than just I. So right away they get into some advanced grammar to be able to kind of get everything right from the beginning. And it happens right from this is one thing that we did a while ago, at one point in the high school history. We had a We Are Black River Falls, as Jenny said, and we've kind of kept that because we think that's a really important thing to have. Plus, grammatically, it's a nice tool to be able to use. So, and one of the things that we do as well is right from the beginning, we make sure to diversify everything that we do so that students have a very low floor and a very high ceiling. So right from day 1, students have different learning experiences, different abilities. So they can say one thing, or they can go all the way through the process with everything. So at the beginning, they can do a lot with what they have, or a little depending upon where they're at in the process. Okay, so this tells a little bit more about how stories are part of what we do and conversation as well. and to keep going with the slide. And these are some of the things that they do, speaking and writing, all the way through from level 1 all the way to the highest level that we have. So these are some pictures, and one of the things that we'll get to in another slide coming up here, I think we have student reading there, and that's a student from a while ago, but we have a library of readers that we have as well, that students will be doing free volunteer reading in the target language as well. So, and you can see our library there that we have in class.
So, yeah, I think that the slide sort of explains itself. We have a variety of books at a variety of levels, and students have the opportunity to choose a book to read for, it's a little amount of time. Over time, they get to read a book or three as they go through the levels, as we have time to go into that. So.
Yep, so this is just more where we want students to be, all the way from some of the technology we use, and then eventually we talk about how you're going to use this in the future. Just this last summer, you might remember, it was a while ago, came to the board meeting to ask permission to be able to take a trip, and last June we had, I think, 12 total.
We have
11 total students, and then our son joined as well after his exchange. But we had students that spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica. So that's kind of the future language study. How can you use it? And some were able to do it then. And this is something that we want them to be able to actually use the language in their lives.
So we can keep advancing. We had a little history here, things that we were working on. Around this time is when we wrote a grant to get some of those novels. And so if we want to go to the next slide, by 2021 we had a pretty nice classroom library that we're still using right now, and we made a switch to standards-based education, and so working with assessing students based on those proficiency standards. And if we go to the next slide, we're still working on that, and now we're on the step of I guess I would say documenting our guaranteed and viable curriculum and linking up all of our assessments so that they're in one place instead of just in my head and Mark's head. We know what we're doing, but we're working on getting everything linked so that anyone can access that at any time. Oh, and then we had some student examples of sort of progress over the course of a trimester, I believe this was. So you can see early on it was a good writing sample for after a few weeks, and then over the course of the trimester the student was able to write more and more. So.
And if you look at the bottom there, you'll see the proficiency levels, so that they're always self-evaluating with this. There's a page on our assessment where they self-evaluate, they see what level they're at and how they can level up to get to the next level. So that's always part of every assessment. So this is from before.
So if we could go, over.
Are there any questions for us?
I'm curious, in level 5, Jenny, that's you that teaches level 5, how many students do you get?
So usually it's a combined level 4 and 5, and so the last couple of years it's been just a few, but they're in together with level 4s, and so I do sort of a 2-year rotation of content.
Okay.
And the students at that level 5 level are working at just a higher level with the same resources.
Yeah, the students have been lowered now too. We had a year when COVID hit where we weren't able to have our 8th grade students they had to travel at cohorts, so they couldn't take year-long Spanish that year. So we're right at this, our seniors now are that grade. So that's why our level 5 is a little bit lower. Starting next year, we'll have more. In 8th grade this year, our number of students, I started with 27 or 28 kids in 8th grade that are taking Spanish 1, and those are the students that will be able to get to level 5. So we're kind of in a catch-up year here where we had some students that didn't take it.
So then how many students do you get in level 1 in high school then?
Right now, I think I have probably in the mid-20s.
Okay.
Yeah, it's because we teach it in 8th grade, those students kind of
I have some now and I'll have some next trimester.
Okay.
So, I mean, I don't know exactly how many have level 1A next trimester, but there is a section, so.
So is that level 1 is 2 trimesters then? Is that?
All the levels are 2 trimesters, yeah. It used to be a year and it's 2 trimesters.
I just want to say thank you because I went to on a couple missions trips with my granddaughter, and she was utilized a lot. We went to Nicaragua 1 year, and then we went to Peru a couple years later. And with the youth, with the students and the pastor, she was utilized as, can you tell us what they're saying? So I know she was like very excited to use her knowledge and skills in those countries.
Wonderful. Thank you for hearing that. That's cool to hear. That's cool.
How many students do you have that are like bilingual, where Spanish is their first language at home at least, compared to, do you have many that actually take the course?
A few.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always a few. Currently, last year in 7th grade, I think I had 2 heritage speakers in class in 7th grade. In 8th grade this year, I don't believe I have any, and I know you have at least 1 heritage speaker in your classes right now.
Do you end up having to kind of change the curriculum for them to challenge them, or are they just kind of?
Well, so it's because we're really focusing on students being able to say and communicate to their best abilities. Like Mark explained, it's the idea of a low floor and a high ceiling, so I wouldn't ever limit what someone could express in class. You know, I encourage all students to operate at their best level, so I think it has worked well.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because that low floor, high ceiling works really well with those students, because they can come in at any, say we're talking about student interests, and they're going to be writing at this level because they have prior experience, and so every assessment is built that way.
Have you found it a challenge at all with, like, you know, the apps that are out there nowadays, Google Translate, with some of the AI stuff that's there with Copilot and other things? I mean, are you seeing kids drifting towards that? Because that might be what like older adults.
Yeah, we kind of know, we've seen that coming over the years,
Yeah.
and as far as working class, it's all done on paper, so their assessments are done on paper. You might think about the ACT too, how that's done the same way. So we want them to be doing their work on paper, and we use technology. We actually use different apps such as Duolingo, and the students can do that outside of class. That's the bridge on how they can extend between semester to semester or year to year when they're not in class. And so that's good. It's actually very useful. I know our son he lived in Argentina last year as a high school student, and he really used Google Translate a lot in the beginning because of all the slang that he had, so he didn't have prior experience with that. So it was very useful. So it's a good tool, but in the classroom, using it how it best works, it can limit learning if you rely on it, but then they can use paper to be able to demonstrate what they know. So we don't have any issues with it at all.
Assessments are all on paper, or it's a conversation with me, and so I think tools are great to use in your personal life, or if students are interested in exploring more. But during class time, it's really, what are you able to do with what you've learned so far? So.
Any other questions for them? Those will move on to our Ho-Chunk language.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And celebrity chef, I should say, for Ho-Chunk language and celebrity chef.
Anybody that made it this weekend, thank you. That was a really good event. We had a great turnout. Real quick, Ho-Chunk Rajura Hasmaninga Hingai. My name is Andrea McCaskey. Everyone knows me as Haas, though. My students, my coworkers. I am the Ho-Chunk language teacher. This is my 4th year with Black River Falls School District, and my 1st year as the Ho-Chunk language teacher. I've always been a part of a team there, and I still have my team, but I am the one that's in the school district this year, and so it's been a little bit of a change for me, but in a good way. This first slide I wanted to make note of, this is something that me and my students have talked about quite a lot this year. In the past 6 months, I've lost the 3 speakers who actually taught me how to speak. And so, right from day one, we've been talking about the importance of the language and why we're doing this. And so we have their pictures up in the classroom. They know like we're doing this for them. And so we use it as motivation and something to keep us going. So in Ho-Chunk 1, right now in first try I have 28 students. That's split up into 2 classes. I know I have another Ho-Chunk 1 that starts next try, but I just want to talk about it right now. We've been talking about the importance of the language. Also, we've been going over the history of us as Ho-Chunk people. I was really surprised at what students didn't know about our history as Ho-Chunk people. Not only to do with our language, but also like the removals, the boarding schools, things like that. Those are all things that I've had to kind of push back some of our language learning. We sprinkle words here and there, but that's not anything that we would go into full Ho-Chunk for, just because we need them to understand like why it's important for them to be taking this class and why so much of our language is lost. Once we get past, the importance of the language and history, we get into our introductions, talking about our names. This is a time for all of our students to kind of express their way of life. We don't like to call them religions really, which way of life they come from. And so that'll tell us like what ceremony they received their name in and how everybody, no matter if they've gotten a name in ceremony or not, is born with a Ho-Chunk name. And also their clans and what their duties are in regards to our tribe. We also get into like, having them talk to each other as best as they can and do some writings. Their favorite right now tends to be when we have a huge, I wouldn't say huge, but when we have a larger vocab section and we get to play the online games to practice the vocab. They really, really like when we pull those out because, I don't know, it's just video games with Ho-Chunk, I guess. But before we get into any of those, they know that they have an assessment with me, like a pre-assessment of like, okay, before I can give you the keyboard, I need to know that you know these words before I put them in front of you. So that's always like fun for me because I have kids that are like really working on their pronunciation, and to hear them from before we started until the end of the unit, there's a lot of growth in that. Also, the pictures included are when we were going over our names unit and them, kind of taking pride in their English name as opposed to their Ho-Chunk name. And then at the bottom, those are my Ho-Chunk ones from last year. Every year we have a Ho-Chunk language baseball. It's a speaking tournament with Tomah, Black River, Wisconsin Dells, Nakusa, and Baraboo school districts. All the students that are taking Ho-Chunk 1 in those levels show up. We mix them up so they're not with their school. They're like mixed up with other students. And then we just let them kind of show what they learned over the year. I think it's really fun, especially now that we've done it that way where we're mixing up schools, because it shows our students that we're learning this for a reason. There's other people that they can talk to. So yeah. Next one is Ho-Chunk 2. Oh, my pictures jumped around. Sorry about that. Ho-Chunk 2, right now I have 21 students. Ooh. Yeah, right now I have 21 students in my Ho-Chunk 2 classes. Everything that we've gone over in Ho-Chunk 1, we talk about again in the beginning of Ho-Chunk 2, just because I do get a lot of transfer students that come from different school districts. And I want to make sure they know what we know in this area, right? So we go over personal information again. We also add on to that. So we just got out of our unit to talk about birthdays and like what's happening during our months. In Ho-Chunk culture, our months are talked about by what's occurring during that moon cycle. And so we go over the importance of that, why we call each month by its moon cycle, and then we get into birthdays. They get to take ownership of like, it's my turn to have a birthday, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, all of those kind of things. Right now we're getting into descriptions of people, so we're talking about appearances as well as characteristics. This is a really fun unit for Ho-Chunk 2 because they have a lot of vocabulary at this point, and they are learning how to describe celebrities right now. We're not talking about each other just yet. And they're having a lot of fun with it. And then also with the whole physical description thing, a way that I've been assessing this is we play what's called the Chie game or the monster game. So I will describe something that I've seen and I will like really exaggerate the body parts on it. Like they had 48 heads and blah, blah, blah. And so they come up to me with their drawing and there's like colors, numbers, body parts, different clothing, and then some of the new words sprinkled in. And instead of having them come up and like assess orally, because I have a lot of students that do really well with that, but I also have students that struggle with that. This is like a different way for them to show that they're understanding the information that's being presented to them. Yeah, and that's what we were doing up in the top. Those are my Ho-Chunk 2s. We were starting the Chie game and breaking up different body parts on the board. They're having fun with that. My Ho-Chunk 3s. Ooh. So I have 12 students right now in my Ho-Chunk 3. We started by reviewing all the vocabulary that they've acquired in this transition time. So Ho-Chunk 3s are students that I actually inherited from the Ho-Chunk teacher that went to ICS last year. And so I need them to kind of get accustomed to my teaching style. So there was a lot of reviewing all of that vocabulary and then them being able to kind of show off with what they know. From there, we jumped right into talking about the human body and illnesses, which beginning of the school year, going into fall, we've had a lot of great content to talk about because everyone's been sick. And so we actually just went over a story and they thought that I made it up, but they understood word for word what was going on. My son recently just had scarlet fever. And so giving them the words to exaggerate, like your body is hot, it is red, it's covered in red. They were using their language to put things together and they're like, is this a real thing? Like what's red fever? What's really red? And so testing their understanding, their comprehension and using real world situations has been super fun. The bottom picture, so on the right, that picture is when I give a new word, like especially a verb, I like to break it down for them in like a verb chart so they have the means to say like I can do it, you can do it, he or she, and then they. We build onto more of those, but those are the basic ones that really help them get going in speaking Ho-Chunk. Because it's not like other languages where we have like pronouns and like things to add to the sentence. Everything that we're talking about is in our verb. And so once you give them a verb chart like that, they can really take off and start making their own sentences, which is super fun to hear. Bottom left picture is, this is our second year of doing this. This is what we call the Ho-Chunk Language Bowl. So all of the different words that each of the school districts have taught their Ho-Chunk language students, we come together, pick a list of words that we think that all students would know. And then we get to this language bowl. You're split up in different teams, just like you would be for the Ho-Chunk baseball. And you're given a word, and some of them are put in like time tenses, so past tense, future tense, present tense. Some of them are put in like you need to use a specific noun in these words, or in these sentences, and you're given 90 seconds as a team to come up with an authentic language, Ho-Chunk language sentence. It's really interesting to hear what words stick with them. I had a lot of words about like just funny words that I taught them. Like there was a lot of things about shonkateki gizozo or zebras. My students remember words that are, I guess, fun to say or have like strange meanings. And so you could tell which ones were from Black River because they talked about some pretty fun things. And I think I have one more slide. Yeah, okay, so future goals for Ho-Chunk. My biggest goal is to get our students most comfortable to tell the stories at Waikon Night. We've been having Waikon Night for at least the last 4 years that I've been here, and I want to say pre-COVID was the first one that I was invited to. But all of those speakers that were on the first page were guests that we've invited over the past how many years, and our number of Ho-Chunk elders is dwindling every day. And so I want to spend this year really building up my students' confidence and having them comfortable enough to tell stories, even if they're stories of their own, even if they're not necessarily our YCOM or our legends. I just want them to be comfortable sharing parts of our culture with this community. So that's one thing that we're working on. I want to get back into 8th grade Ho Chunk. We did it last year. I really enjoyed it. And the 8th graders that I had for the first try that came over this year are like, my Ho Chunk 1, I got to push them farther than I ever have at this point. And so I really enjoyed having the 8th graders. I also really want to get some more reading materials together. Unlike a lot of other languages, we have to come up with any of the materials that we use in our classroom. And so we do a lot of like kids books, but before the Ho Chunk 3 and 4, we're making a lot of the materials, and I want to get back into that. I want to maintain the Ho Chunk enrollment numbers, as well as make Ho Chunk more a part of our everyday. Something that I have been talking to Julie Tiedens about, as well as some of my Ho Chunk kids, were just when we do the morning announcements, having something so simple as like Heine P included in that, so everyone at the school is hearing Ho Chunk every day, and they can use it more like in conversation. One thing that I didn't add up here is having Ho Chunk in the trimesters has been like really difficult when we have that middle try off. And so in past years, not only was I teaching in the school, but I was also teaching community classes online. So during my prep hour, I would be teaching online, then jump right back into it. This year, I asked if I could be taken off of the online classes so I can reserve that time for my students that are in that gap. And so I will be having specific Ho Chunk 1, 2, and 3 online courses so those students don't miss language and they're like constantly using it, because that 12 weeks in the middle is hard to go without language. So that is, yeah, that's me, that's Ho Chunk. Any question?
Just for the record, we would also love 8th grade Ho Chunk back. It was a staffing challenge, just so everyone understands. We also really appreciated that. We'd love to put it back in 8th grade, but there's only so many people qualified to be language teachers, right? Back to your point of how many speakers you have.
Do you know how many you have?
So when I've been in the language division, this will be my 11th year. When I started, I want to say our number was over the 70s, and in my 10 years, I would be surprised if we have more than like 40, 50 that are native speakers in this language. And of that, there's a lot of people that are timid and apprehensive to speak because of the trauma that was experienced in the boarding schools. And there's like a huge gap of elders to my generation where that middle gap doesn't speak because of their families wanting them to be able to fit in, and so they only spoke English in the home. So yeah, our numbers are really small.
You talked about an app, and we're all familiar. Well, I think we're all familiar with like Duolingo. Is there Duolingo for Ho Chunk, or what? When you talk about you had some online games,
Okay.
like what? I'm curious what software you're using.
So the Ho Chunk Language Division partnered with the Language Conservancy, and we have 2 apps that are live right now. One is our Ho Chunk Dictionary, and so that was a 2-year effort where we would sit down with the Ho Chunk elders, a lot of which were pictured on that first page, and we would do recordings. So what you would do is you would go in the recording booth and you would give them a word in English, and then you would ask them like, how do you say this in Ho Chunk? And they'd be like, and then they'd say something, and then we'd be like, okay. Then we'd bring another one in, and we'd say like, how do you say this in Ho Chunk? And then whatever like conversation, example sentences that they come up with, those are the example sentences that are in our dictionary app. It's really cool to hear more than one speaker talking to each other on there, but those ones are kind of hidden gems. You gotta find those recordings. The other app that we have right now is the Ho Chunk Hoite'e Peres. It is like it's an app that we encourage learners to use if they are trying to get a base of the Ho Chunk language on their own. So a lot of the classes that we teach is specifically for like online classes all start at level 1 Ho Chunk, and this is supposed to be so you can get through level 1 like on your own or have that review so you can jump right into the live classes that we're teaching. And so I've used it in my classroom to have my students compete, I guess, because it kind of ranks you at the end. Have my students compete for like who is the best at their Ho-Chunk spelling, who is the best at their Ho-Chunk sentence structure, grammar questions, things like that. But I haven't really used it like outside of my classroom yet to see how I can use it as like a teaching tool. But yeah.
Do you ever, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You're all right, go ahead.
Do you ever plan to start something at the elementary level?
I would love to.
Because don't they say the earlier the child starts learning their native language, the easier it is and faster they pick it up?
Yep. I would love to do something at the elementary age. I have 2 sons of my own. One is 4, one is 7. And from birth, we've been a bilingual household. And so I didn't realize when you're teaching a kid 2 languages that you have to tell them the word in both languages. Recently someone had brought up turtle to my son and he didn't know what that was. I was like, yes, you do know what a turtle is. And so I said the word in Ho-Chunk, K-Chunk, and he was like, oh, I didn't know there was an English word for that. And so like if we can get Ho-Chunk to be that normalized, like in the elementary school age, I feel like we're gonna have a new generation of speakers coming in.
So I love the like contextual piece, the like historical piece to like go with it. How many kids can you take a year in total across all your classes?
I don't know. That sounds like bad, but I genuinely don't know just because this is my first year where it's just any classes that we've had before have been split. And so I want to say last year when I had like Ho-Chunk 1s and then the 8th grade Ho-Chunk, I had high numbers. I want to say like in the 40s for year-long Ho-Chunk 1. And my 8th grade classes were a lot of 8th graders.
It went from 15 to 18 for your 8th grade classes last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
So a lot more. Encourage people to sign up for Ho-Chunk. We do a lot. It's part of our culture. So.
Any questions?
Thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, now back into the agenda in order. First is 6-1, we're gonna give some grants.
Sure, so at the writing of the packet, there were not any to share, but then Legacy Trees decided to make a donation of 3 trees right by the fence from the pond to the softball field over at Red Creek. So valued at about $1,500 from Legacy Trees. So I don't know if everyone's aware, Laura Zillmer retired last year. Her ex-husband and 2 children. Her 2 children work for Legacy Trees, her ex-husband's company, doesn't matter. She donated some trees last year upon her retirement, and then just last week, they wanted to donate some to the softball area. So we very much appreciate that generous donation.
And we don't, that's small enough, we do not need to.
Correct.
Approve that. All right. Next is 6-2. So we're gonna talk about the changes to the tax levy here.
So I put on the agenda both the school-sponsored childcare and community education coordinator, but both of those are completely wrapped up in that Fund 80 levy that we've been talking about. So I feel like it would be best served to start from the financial side and have Jill explain to you. As I think Jill says the words from January, February, when we start talking budget until October, that everything is based off estimates, right? We never know how much money we're gonna have until we know how many butts we have in seats. And the third Friday count recently happened in September, so we know how many butts in seats we have. And then it matters the assessed value of the property and all of those things. So all of those pieces just locked in last week. So that means every other budget conversation has been based off of our best estimates. And now it has all been solidified. And so Jill's gonna walk us through that financial picture first, and then we will dive into those 2 other topics.
Okay, so I just want to walk through the chart that I included in the packet. The second column of numbers was what was published for the annual meeting. And it was a little bit different than what we talked about in September due to one of the factors that Dr. Severson just mentioned, our equalized property values. Those were established for us on October 1st. And then on October 15th, we learned what our state equalization aid will be from the state. So that's the next factor we need. The number of students helps us determine what our revenue limit is. Then we learn what our aid amount is. Then we can set what our tax levy is. And the equalized property value helps determine what our tax rate is. So those are all the factors that we need to set our levy for the district by the November deadline. So the 24-25 published for the annual meeting versus the 24-25 proposed tax levy. So I'm talking about the orange column right now. And you can see that our Fund 10 tax levy dropped significantly. Again, that was because our equalization aid came in higher than I estimated. And I'm always conservative. I'd rather tell this story than say, oh, sorry, our levy's going to be way higher than I had planned. So our aid came in a little bit higher. A lot of that is due to the increased amount that the state put into the pool of dollars for aid. Districts receive their aid based on, I'll give you the quick rundown, I'm not going to get too detailed in the weeds, but basically districts receive aid based on their spending per pupil, and what your property values are. So our spending per pupil was a little bit higher because we had fewer pupils perhaps, and we also dipped into fund balance when we were buying buses and finishing up some projects that we had planned on some expenditures. So we spent a little bit more, but good news is we received a little bit more equalization aid on that. So our levy, it would be about $4.8 million for Fund 10. The $124,000 for Fund 38 is our non-referendum debt. That's for the pool project. This is the first, and solar. This is the first year that we'll be starting to pay back on that 10-year promissory note. So $124,000 for that. $2.1 million for Fund 39. That is our scheduled referendum debt that we have to pay back, principal and interest. So that's a scheduled amount. The $500,000, that is the debt defeasance. So that's the additional, you can think about that like it's a extra principal payment that we want to pay down on our debt. And then the Fund 80 includes the community service levy, so the amounts for Andy Oscard for activities director, we code 10% to Fund 80 for that, and we have levied for that for several years. It includes the daycare expenses that we talked about in September. Not only the one-time cost, but also the amount that would not be covered by tuition from parents. And then we also added in there, and Dr. Severson will talk about that in a little bit too, the community ed coordinator. So even including all of those amounts.
So just for clarity, there's also $10,000 for community health
Yes.
worker backup.
Yep.
I just want to make sure everyone knows all of the pieces in the
That's the other.
Fund 80. Thank you.
Thank you. So including all of that, what I just described, you can see comparing that to last year's levy, we're actually dropping by $23,000. So even including all of that, the levy could drop $23,000. And that's a moving target, right? You can defease more if you want to keep the levy exactly the same. You could, defease $523,595, and the levy would be exactly the same. The tax rate would change very slightly if you did that to $6.01. So the tax rate is dropping from last year as well, from $6.30 down to $6. Anybody have any questions on that?
So I have recently had multiple community members try and ask me about this. And although I understand it on a fundamental level, my grace in explaining it isn't so good. I got a little bit bulky and was like, on second thought, can we just direct them to you with questions?
Oh, of course, yes, absolutely. I don't expect you to
great.
explain all of the finances to that detailed level, but certainly having an understanding of it is good, right? I mean, you should understand where we were last year, what it's looking like for this year.
And so last month we were talking about if the board were to support a potential school board sponsored childcare center, we were talking about what the change in that tax rate would be. And we talked about we control that tax rate by how much we choose to defease the debt from our facility referendum, right? And so there was conversation, well, if we wanted our tax rate to be able to drop some, what if we defeased less for 1 year in order to pay those one-time expenses, and then the tax rate would still be able to drop. Due to Jill's very conservative estimates, you can see that we actually increased our defeasance amount and put in the other expenses that she talked about, and our tax rate would still be dropping to $6 with all those other things included. And again, sometimes this board likes to hear about comparables with others, and sometimes this board does not want to talk comparables. I just want to very briefly state, when the revenue limits came into play back in '94, we were locked in as a low spender. I do not wear that as a badge of honor. If I could spend more on behalf of the education of our children, I would gladly do it, but the funding formula does not allow us to do it. So when we compare ourselves to other schools, it is not that our tax rate is 6 and our neighbor's tax rate is over 8 because we choose to be that thrifty. It's because that is the formula that the state has created. The state has said, this is how much you get to spend per student based on the number of students you have, the assessed value of your properties, here's what your local property tax is. So I just want to be clear about that. Our tax rate, if you choose yes for both of these next topics, will still go down 30 cents. It will be from $6.30 this past year to $6. Our neighbors on one side, Jill, was 8. I printed it and I didn't grab it.
Yeah, 864, I didn't print it out either.
And then on our other side is also over $8 is their tax rate.
Just over
And
814 would be Millman.
Nobody wants to pay taxes. I fully understand that. I'm simply trying to point out that when you live in the school district of Black River Falls, your tax rate is $6. If you live in any direction around us, it's over $8. Again, I don't say that because I take pride in being so thrifty and frugal. When you think of some of the other districts, they literally have $2,000 more per student to spend. Like, that's a lot. $2,000 per student that they get to invest. So this is the cards that were dealt. This is what the state formula allows us to do unless we decide to go to a revenue limit override. I simply wanted to communicate very clearly that allowing the levy to drop, the tax rate to drop from $6.30 to $6 is significant, and our neighbors are all well above that, and it would allow us to be able to do some of those new things. There's another hand up. I don't know if you want to just share how that works or doesn't work.
So this is a meeting of the board in public. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand earlier. So
I didn't know when I should go, honestly.
Oh,
you're welcome to stay.
If I'm supposed to.
No, he's talking to me.
Oh.
Yeah.
And nobody's in trouble. You're okay to stay. You're okay to go. Whatever you'd like to do. You're all
I'm
good.
also very interested.
Perfect.
So public doesn't have comment on that? Because I just have one little thing.
No, I'm sorry. This is our meeting in public. This is not a public meeting. I'd encourage you to email the board between meetings, or you participated in public comment earlier. And just so you're aware, this is not going up for vote tonight. This goes up for vote next Monday night after the annual meeting.
So I wanted to point out that tax rate stuff for you. Okay. So any questions about that, or do you want to talk about the two proposals? Okay. Not hearing any questions. We'll go on. Again, just a reminder that that tax rate also, we decided to increase the defeasance as well because we have that opportunity. As Jill pointed out, last year we dipped into our fund balance to buy that second bus was an absolute must. We were well outdated and we needed that second bus. That means we spent more, we got aided more this year. This year, we're not going to overspend. That means our aid will go down for next year because we get aided. You get aided this year on what you spent last year. We won't overspend this year, therefore our aid will go down for next year. That is why we don't want to let our tax rate drop all the way down by not using a defeasance, because then people are going to feel this jumping all over the place, and it doesn't instill a lot of faith or trust in the fiscal management.
I would add, Shelley, it's the new biennium budget. We don't know how much they're gonna be putting in that pot of money across the state, right? So we don't know for sure what our aid will be next year. That's more my conservative approach. I don't know if it's gonna go up or go down. It just depends on what the state puts in. It depends on what every other district spends. So it's always an unknown at this point. So by putting that defeasance out there, it can help us offset if that Fund 10 levy would go up by a lot. We wouldn't levy a defeasance next year, or we could even levy less in Fund 39 because we have these funds sitting there to be able to make those payments. So it just helps us strategize and smooth out those bumps with tax levies and equalization aid.
And paying off debt earlier saves our community interest payments in the long run.
And then therefore benefits Fund 10, right?
All right, so childcare, I don't have a lot of new information for you. We've presented to you the proposed budget. We've presented to you the building spaces that we're planning on using. You kind of have all that information. Last month, there was some conversation about some people feeling like the data was outdated, that perhaps it was collected pre-COVID. The Jackson County Child Care Network has done a second survey, more recent, and it tells the story of a significant amount of need, as we anticipated. Since our last month's meeting, I've been at 2 meetings with different business partners, and I'm hearing the same conversation that we've been hearing for years, that they're losing employees because they don't have childcare. Nick, we were really curious about your comments from last month where you said that BRAC had some spots open, and you're absolutely right. Our 4K programming created a weirdness for them that they're still trying to figure out, because those families still need care on Friday. BRAC can't allow them to only be part-time and only go 1 day, so parents are having to pay for the whole week just to go on Friday, and so that left some odd gaps for them. So it's not availability across the board, it's in unique little spots. And so we certainly were talking about that. Marianne Torkelson, who has been the front face of that Jackson County Child Care Network, she has heard lots of questions in the community about the large grant that organization has recently received. And people are confused why the district would need to ask for additional funds if that organization has a grant. And her talking points to me were that grant was, and many of you have done grant work in different arenas, what you say you're going to do, that narrative you write, that's your goals of your grant, and that's how you were funded, and that's what you have to spend it on. That was done in 2023, and it was to create more incubators and to try to provide the opportunity for people who are providing care in their home to find a site out of their home in which they could provide childcare. And none of the school districts at that time in our county were engaging in serious conversations about childcare. So they wrote it in 2023. They were just awarded that grant in July of 2024. So large gap in there. So some people have asked, well, where's the work you've done? They just were awarded it in July, and so they are just launching all of that stuff. And so perhaps you've watched our neighbors Alma Center. They are doing a referendum for their childcare because they need to build a building. Blair Taylor used a referendum because they needed to build a building. We don't have to build a building. We need some smaller remodels. So I just wanted to point out those. I don't know if you have any other questions that you've been hearing from people that we can try to answer for you, or if that takes care of some that you've had in between.
I'm just curious, when you guys started and proposed to do the childcare, I found this on DPI website. It's like a tree.
Okay.
On how to use Fund 80.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious if you guys did that, or?
I don't know that tree, but Jill certainly knows the requirements of the spending allowances for Fund 80.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it just sort of, I'll pass it down to Jill. It just sort of, I just was curious.
Mm-hmm. What it can, because you can't, it's got to be for community service. but there are some things that are allowable expenses and
Right.
some, and it's been revised over years. I'm gonna say early on, a lot of communities used it for their school resource officer. And then there was a time when that wasn't allowable as a community service account, all of those things. So they definitely monitor closely how those dollars are being spent.
Is that still the case for the school resource officer?
You can't call it a school resource officer, they have to be employed, jointly employed, and I don't remember, it has to be like some kind of an education component to it.
Yeah, it can't be just for school hours, the
Right.
school day, it's gotta be.
So we'd be
more
happy,
than-
because it has to be a community service levy, so you'd have to be able to pay for that person to do jobs outside of the school as well. And the agreement that we have with the sheriff's department and shared costs with the other 3 districts probably costs us less than, and then all of that time goes to a school at least, if not all hours. So we can certainly investigate it if it's something the board is interested in, but it has to be, whatever services you generate through a community service levy have to be open for the community, not just for those engaged with the school.
Is it okay if we make policy about Fund 80 according to the state law of Wisconsin? We don't have a policy.
Because the law tells us what we can spend it on. I mean, we certainly can, but it's gonna mirror the law, because we're not gonna.
DPI clearly enforcing it.
For sure.
It says
Absolutely.
go make the policy
Okay,
about Fund 80 so people would know what is this about.
sure.
I mean, we know we attend the board meeting pretty regularly, but we work for the people and they would like to
Certainly.
read for themselves. So there's a lot of talk going on in the town about Fund 80 and they come up with this idea. Where is that policy? So I went on internet, it wasn't there in our website, policy of Fund 80, how to utilize it and what are the laws and criteria to divide it among those who are 19 or 20 years old and they want to be educated. Due to some reason they dropped out and come back, we help them. Yeah, that covers in Fund 80 too.
I'm sorry, you're making, okay. Yes.
In Fund 80 that we can help our community, those who are 21 years of age, we will help them in education.
And just so you know, WTC does that for free. Just to
Yeah,
be clear.
WTC and many organizations help,
Yeah.
but this is our money, so we will utilize to our people. So this is my take. I think so we should have a policy. It is just my opinion, I don't know.
Okay, thanks for sharing. Any other questions about childcare? Otherwise we'll talk about.
Shall we can we just go back and, with the referendum?
Yeah.
So is there anything else that the school district could utilize that we could include with in the referendum along with the childcare, unless it's because of 2 separate?
So, there's gonna be a much bigger conversation than you were probably asking me. I would love to go to a revenue limit override. I would love to ask our community to allow us to spend more money on the education of our students. And we have just asked our community twice in the last 10 years for our facilities. So when you ask, are they 2 different? A district can go to referendum, and it's either to take on debt, like to build a building, or to spend more than your state formula allows you to, so a revenue limit override or whatever. So sometimes you hear school districts saying that we're going to referendum like us and we're gonna build a new elementary school. That's pretty easy, everyone can understand that. There are districts, in fact, over half the districts in the state of Wisconsin get their state formula, what they can spend based on the state formula, and they ask their community, they say, we can't hire enough teachers because we don't pay high enough salaries. We want to be able to add this extension program for our kids, but it's too expensive, we can't do it. We want to expand our technology usage. We're gonna ask our community to allow us to spend $800,000 more than we currently are. That $800,000 for 1 year, 3 years, reoccurring, however they want to do that, that is a referendum question on the ballot. And so there are a lot of districts who will have two questions on there. One will be, we're gonna do renovations to this building to increase our safety and security, and we want an additional $1 million each year to be able to spend to support our programming. So we definitely could ask. So this board is relatively new. Our previous board, boards, I should say, have felt that it is a big deal to go and ask our high poverty community for money. And so only do it if we absolutely need to. And so we have used all of our other opportunities to try to cut where we can. There are districts who offer more programs because they spend $2,000 more per kid, right? We have made reductions as opposed to going to our community and asking. So when you ask me, is there more we could ask for? Heck yes. And it wouldn't take very long for people to come up with a list of programs that we think are going to be a significant difference maker for our kids, but we can't afford them right now.
So. Only reason I ask, Blair Taylor did do that.
Yep.
They included.
They had a building and they had
some extra.
Revenue limit override, or there's another name for it, Jill. Revenue limit override and.
It's just
operational, like to keep your lights on, basically. So it's an operational referendum. And so we always say this when we don't know what the biennium budget is going to look like. It is possible that once that biennium budget comes out next spring, that I'm talking to all of you about going to a operational referendum for fall because we can't possibly make enough cuts to get there. And the timing is terrible, right? I don't know when that biennium budget is going to pass. Usually it's June 30th is the end of our fiscal year. Hopefully the budget is passed by then, but you're gonna need to pass a balanced budget in June, right? So the timing is gonna be messy. You would need to decide by, I wanna say it's mid-August, if you want a question on the election. And fall of 2025, there is no election. So we decided not to do one this fall. This group could have conversations and decide to do one next spring. I think that would need to be, the language would need to be decided by January if we're gonna go next spring. And if we don't go next spring, then we have to wait a full year until the next election. School districts used to be able to call a special election, which is silly and expensive, but it is what used to have to happen. The legislature no longer allows for school districts to do special elections. You have to attach on to another election that's happening, which makes good sense because all the poll workers, everything, all becomes expensive. So yeah, it's complicated, but we are always open to that conversation. Each year when the admin team sits down with our budget, we look at if we do salary increase, our benefit increase, based on the number of kids we think we're gonna have, and then we come up with that deficit, and then we start talking about how we can reprioritize things to make that balance. Many districts, instead of doing that, they say we have to go ask our community for this amount of money. Every board is different, and if this board tells us that you would like to explore that, we are very happy to do that.
Jeanette, with what you're asking, are you kind of commenting towards like that 23,000 that right now is not included in the Fund 80 amount, or are you?
Well, it was just because when I had asked about the referendum and then the cost of the daycare, they said that the referendum included other costs that they wanted.
Other communities have said that. Yes. Yep. And so there's a cost to us for having a referendum question. Marty, we have 19 municipalities and all the election and ballots, all that stuff. So there's a cost to us to do that. And I'm not being dismissive because $100,000 is a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about an election for $100,000, it's not. But if we had to build a building for that daycare, now that cost is far more substantial.
So I'll just bring the question up, like the reason to not utilize the under that we have on this and just roll it into either defeasance or into something else that could be used for community support, for really the cost of a penny. Essentially, to me, it seems like we should try to at least go flat. That's kind of my question to the rest of the board is it like why let that go away when it's not a huge impact on the families?
You're saying at the 630 rate or the 623?
Honestly,
623 is not a thing anymore.
Well, that's what we've noticed. We can keep it the same with that, right? We could also.
No, I'm saying like what Jill talked about earlier, which basically takes us to the 601, which is posted on here because there's a 23. If you took the 23,000, move it into one of those, you know, essentially the Fund 80, and go flat, it would go up to $6.01 as far as what the total levy tax rate would be per 100,000 of whole, right?
I'm not catching the flat part.
So-
Let's say that again.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure what
So
the
like-
23,000 was before, now I'm with you.
Yeah, so right now, the far right column, right? The one in parentheses, 23,500, that means that that's money that we're not asking to take.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I would just assume see us, and this is my own personal opinion, but would be to see us go flat, meaning take that 23,595, roll it into Fund 80 and say, okay, Shelley, Jill, school district, find a way to utilize those dollars to better our community and our kids. And the impact is 1 cent on $100,000 of property ownership. So, okay, so it seems pretty small, but I think that 23 grand could be, you know, that's maybe half a year's salary for some sort of piece that maybe we couldn't do years past or haven't been able to do. So I guess I'd like us to consider that. And if in the end the majority says, hey, we'd rather not do that, fine. But in my mind, I think we should. So.
And so just so everyone is with us, when he says go flat, our total levy is being reduced by $23,000, right? So everyone's with us, and so that's the part that he's talking about. Yeah, instead of
The levy, that's where I was looking at the tax rate,
Same.
you're looking at the levy amount, not the
Right.
tax rate.
that's when I found that I was with you. Yes.
Yeah, and
So if I could talk a little bit about the community education coordinator, and then we can have more conversation, because this is something that we talked about a lot last spring. The admin team has talked about it considerably. And then when we didn't know what our tax rate was going to be, and I felt, you didn't say it in so many words, I felt the board very much wanted to protect the tax levy and the tax rate, because nobody wants to push people's taxes up. So I felt that you were wanting to be conservative on that. We prioritized the daycare center than the community education coordinator. One of the things that I hear from families that is a significant challenge for them is, how do you know all of the things available for your kids and families in our community? If you're connected to these people, you might know about this program. If you're connected to these people, you might know about this opportunity. If you're connected here, you might. But there's not one entity that's bringing together all of the people who are doing programming for our youth. We've got some examples of some school districts that do, so that's part one. Part two, I think since COVID, we have done a horrible job opening up our schools and getting more community members back into our schools. There used to be a lot more volunteerism during the day, and there used to be more reasons for adults to come in at night. Back in the day, WTC used to teach like a photography class, or they would teach like an intro to welding, or all of these things for adults as well, and that simply doesn't happen in our community anymore. So there are examples of communities. I'm going to use River Falls as the example. Their individual, the community education coordinator, she connects to Parks and Rec. She connects to the other organizations who are providing experiences and events and opportunities for kids and families. And they put them all into one booklet. This is our community education booklet for the first half of the year. And there might be a guy who knows how to fix bikes, so he decides he's going to put together a bike checkpoint night, and that date is in there. Anybody in the community can bring their bike and learn how to check out their bike, right? It could be gardening, it could be cooking. We've got beautiful family consumer science labs at our middle school and our high school. Families could come in and do a cooking class. And this community education person is the connection in the community that provides, doesn't have to do all that teaching, but finds these people with areas of expertise that they're willing to share. We can keep the cost to a minimum if people are willing to, I'll come teach that for 3 weeks, but then I'm going to attend this for 2 weeks. Some can be with your kids, some can be for adults. All of those things could happen, and our schools that our community has invested so heavily in over the last 10 years could be the center of that. our schools, other than gymnasiums, they are booked really, really tight, but we have so many classroom spaces available that could be used by community groups in the evenings. And I just think that it would be a fantastic way to get our community back into our schools, and they can start to realize some of the value of what they've invested in over the last years as we've done all these facilities. I would love to say ideally, well, we could just manage that without a person. We can't manage that without a person. When you think about the connecting to all those different people and organizations, and so I'm hoping that an offshoot of that is that they can help with some volunteerism encouraging, but I just really think that when you talk community service, connecting new families to a person who knows all of the fun things, like, so our schools do some sports, but when your kids are younger, it's the Great Northwest League. We've had parents complain to us, how come my kid didn't get the flyer for the Great Northwest League? And we say, because that's not a school thing, that's a parent who decides to coach, who calls 5 kids and says you want to do this, right? So a way to neutralize and level the playing field so everybody knows what's available and families can take advantage of the things that are most influential for them. Yes.
Two community officers, right? You were talking about to hire 2 community relationship officers.
Nope, I was talking about a community education coordinator.
Yes.
They're not an officer.
Not like a police officer.
Okay.
No, I'm just employee. Officer could be means employee. So those 2 folks.
One person is what I'm talking about. You keep saying 2, but I'm talking
about
one.
Yeah, there were 2 people, right? Maybe I misread somewhere.
Or maybe I mistyped, but I only mean one.
One. We talked about it long time
In the
ago.
past, I think we did bring up 2 possibly.
Oh,
I think he's the community health worker.
Thank you. Community health worker is probably, sorry, they're separate, but they both had the word community.
Yeah, let's say one even, that is perfectly fine. So that person could create a positive relationship between school and community.
They could help foster it.
So he or she, I will train him personally, or I will train her personally. Go to Jackson County for education. Make a good relationship with us. It's such a fight out there in downtown.
That doesn't feel like it's really on topic.
So those are parents. Jackson County for education, they are parents. Their kids are in our schools. So this would be a good position to utilize that individual to make a community a better and peaceful place, not fighting each other. So I like the idea, and I will personally train that individual. You okay with it?
I heard what you said, yes.
You're not okay?
I don't think
Okay,
that's
I will not train.
That's
You
really
can
a role,
train.
but yeah, not my role either. But
Any questions about that idea of a community education coordinator?
I think it sounds lovely.
That
I love it.
lovely. The question, and we talked about this before, the job description would be written, qualifications, did you have in mind the qualification of that individual?
To be honest, I feel like marketing is going to be a little bit a part of it, right? Because you can have some great ideas, but if you don't find the right avenue to make people aware of it, then you're not really being that helpful. So I feel like some kind of a marketing and communications is going to be important. They're going to have to talk to enough people in town to know who's got what skills and interests that we could possibly talk into. Right now, the library is doing a lot of different services in their community room that people come to because they're just unique areas of interest, right? So if we could publish this book twice a year, here's the fall stuff, here's the spring stuff, I just think that it's got a lot of potential. So super organized and communications and
community building.
And community building for sure.
So that'd be like an annual employee, meaning 12-month employee?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
To be honest, summer school, we could have brought in those experiences because then all of our schools are available for spaces. So there certainly could be, and we've got so many, there's community groups that do like kayaking in the summer together. That could be if they could become that resource for the community, then more people would know about it and would be able to take advantage. So.
How much is the Lunda Center doing with those community? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm a great I'm not sure I know all of that much, but an example, so just in this book, not that we have to do anything about it, but their Wednesday night family game night could be listed in there. So that again, being that one resource. They put on some community events, but I'm really not sure how much programming outside of the Lunda Center. Yeah.
Like they have the library is there this week. They're having their story hour there.
Okay.
They do a really good job of partnering. I know, like when we were at Children's, they partner with our Family Resource Center all the time. I think though it's still really hard to keep track of all the who's and who's to and I mean Beth is great, and so is Emily, but like who's doing what and when, it's just
And so
that's not your primary focus, it's a puzzle.
Yeah, last spring Forest Street kind of did that little mini experiment with strengthening families classes in the evening and conscious discipline. And while they had a small number of people who participated, they were very appreciative. And I was just talking to Mrs. Gamrath, and she said that a parent was just asking her, like, we're struggling to get our child's behavior under control. What ideas do you have, right? Well, part of that could be some parenting classes that were available, and so that is the idea behind the community education coordinator. We talked about it previously for certain. I put it on the back burner when we were unsure what our levy was going to look like. When the numbers got locked in, I called Brad and said, can I bring it back up again, because it wouldn't be an add-on to where we had been talking. So, yeah.
Have you ever thought about that maybe it wouldn't be a full-time position? Possibly. I don't know. I'm thinking that whoever does it, they could either probably be like super busy and do a really good job, or just kind of like, put their time in, So I'm trying to figure out in my mind, like, if that's a full-time or like a part-time position,
When I say communication, I think that takes a lot of time to get in the know of all of the people that you're trying to collaborate with. The other thing that Jill and I talked briefly about when we were looking at the levy amount, I think the initial startup is really heavy lifting. Perhaps it declines over time. Perhaps once you've made these connections and people know where that resource is, maybe year 2, it moves down to something less than full-time. I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I would just say, yes, that's possible, right? It's
sure.
all possible.
The first year would be the most challenging.
That's what I think, more heavy lifting when you're first generating.
And then as far as wages and benefits, would not come out of the community fund 80, it would come out of, or would we plan every year to have?
Every year the board would make a decision whether they wanted to continue to fund that position. Yeah.
Through Fund 80.
Correct.
Right, through Fund.
Correct. Right. It could stay in Fund 80 for sure, as long as it still meets the expectations of DPI.
Okay.
So it'd be kind of a per year thing.
Yeah. That being said, Jill and I always say to you guys, we take 10% of Andy Osagard's salary from there. We've got the $10,000 set aside for community health worker if the reimbursements aren't decided. So we tell you about it, and you take action at the meeting. But there's not always a proposal on Andy Osagard's 10%, right? So once it's been done for so many years, we don't talk about it as much, but we certainly can, certainly want you to know what is being approved as part of that. Any other questions about Fund 80 or those 2 agenda items that I kind of lumped together?
So like with that daycare thing, I mean, would that be like, all right, we're doing it forever, or like would that
Every year, you decide.
decide every year? So if you're like you're losing money every year and yada, you could pull the plug or whatever.
Well, let's just say that right now the board, hypothetically, what if the board decided you were going to fund it through Fund 80 this year, and 3 years from now, the board decides they want to go to a revenue limit or an operational referendum. If you wanted, you could put the childcare expense on that referendum as opposed to Fund 80. It would just be moving it, right, but it would be an option, I guess is what I'm saying. So yes, you could decide to stop it, you could decide to move it to operational, you could.
So, go ahead. So Fund 80 money will be used in a daycare in Gay Park, right?
Some of it, yes.
And also the person we are hiring, whom I call officer, which means employee, will be also funded by that Fund 80. That is already tiny money, will be divided into 2 different divisions.
And I just want to remind you, and we pay 10% of our activities director salary, and there's 10,000 set aside for our community health worker, if there is a gap there, so that doesn't have to come out of Fund 10. So all 4 of those things are included in that dollar amount that you see there.
4 items.
Yep, that's the detail here at the car.
Yes, I didn't get that page with my packet, but that's all right. I can see it here.
It's on the back side of this one.
Yes. So the 4 items for the child care, daycare, and that community officer, and 10% increase or something.
10% of Andy Osgard, our activities director, because he spends at least 10% of his time scheduling all the facilities for all the youth sports that are not school sponsored. So that's why the community levy can pay for a portion of his salary.
Wouldn't it be a good goal for the childcare thing to within 3 to 5 years at least be a break-even entity?
Sure would.
Ideally.
Yeah, it's always a goal, right? I mean, you certainly can. And
too many people do a business and oh, I'm gonna lose $3,000, but that's fine,
Okay, we're not saying that, just to be clear. But you're right, a business would not say.
You would, not chase that.
Correct.
Down that road, but obviously there's startup and stuff that's gonna be expenses, but I think that after say 3 to 5 years, the goal should be to at least break even or make some revenue.
I think it's important to remember too, the initial estimates are based on a pretty low head count of activity within that building. And that building could hold more people than what we're saying we're gonna try to fill with that first piece. So,
and it all depends, are we taking more infants or are we taking more school age, right? That also dramatically impacts how many
the
you
number
can
of
serve.
health insurance plans.
And
staff.
So, Nick, I would just remind you, so when we look at hiring staff, one person, a couple people decide that they don't need health insurance, that is a significant difference in those costs. So there's a lot of variables. And as Jill said, we are always conservative in our estimates.
Blair Taylor, when I called and talked with them, they had said that they have about 10 full-time employees. And then not everyone will take the insurance because of their spouses. Or if it's a younger
They're on their parents
teacher,
yet.
they're still on their parents. And then they have 3 part-time. So an older woman who comes in and helps through the breakfast hour. But that's what she had shared with their staff. And she said the first 2 years probably was their biggest issues with staffing. It was maintaining it, trying to weed it out.
Find your long-term people.
Yeah.
I think they changed their wages too along the way.
Oh,
yeah.
Any other questions?
So this will be presented then at the annual meeting, and then reminder to the board that we have a board meeting immediately following the annual meetings.
Oh, on the 28th we have a meeting, and after that meeting we have a board meeting.
Correct.
Oh, meeting over meeting.
Correct. Yep.
That's good.
All right. Next, the family communication. Very student progress.
Hi. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about secondary communication around grades. This is one of those real challenges, and it's totally our vision and our goal that we are as clear and transparent as possible in communicating the progress of students in each of our courses, and all of our courses, but specifically tonight I'm talking about middle school and high school. So this may sound familiar for those of you that are on the board, but this is just something that we're continually working on. So we use technology to support our communication. We have Canvas, we have Skyward, and we have the website. So then on the next slide, on the school website, this is a really easy place for parents and for me, many of us. This is how we get to Skyward and Canvas. So BRF.org, and you can click into either of the apps. And so both of these platforms serve a purpose for us. So Canvas, when we're thinking about Canvas, that's our learning management system. So that's where students can go on and get their homework, and their different teachers can share different resources. It does have a gradebook option, and right now what we're doing in that gradebook is we are sharing when students complete the various tasks, formative assessment, homework, quizzes, that they have been assigned during their course. So you can, as a parent, go in and say, is my child completing their work? And that's the go-to place for that. So there's just a couple of visuals here for those of you that don't have anyone in the system, what that would look like. And so this student, Lily Sullivan, had some things that were late. So I can say, Lily Sullivan, what is going on? Why are you getting some work in late? And then the check marks tell me that work is in or that something is missing. And so that's a place where we can have a conversation, and it can be helpful. The other thing that's super helpful is when you register or sign up with your students, or you register your child. So I get an email, but you have to sign up for it. So all of the school secretaries know how to do that. You get an email every time your student turns in their work and it gets graded. So there's this constant, and it comes into your email so you can go in and check and see what's happening. So that's a very helpful communication piece. And then if we keep going.
Stop me 1 second there, Nicole. I had a lot of feedback from different community members on like how quickly grades are being posted for their kids, especially when it has to do with athletics and those type of things. So
yes.
Can you explain that a little bit to us, like
I
what
would
the
love
expectations
to.
are
Yep.
for the staff?
Or is like Mrs. Penza too?
Miss Penza, would you like to help explain?
Ms.
I
Penza.
can. That concern.
I'm not trying to cut you off, I just
Oh,
it's
no,
your
no.
story.
So right now at the high school, and the middle school has a little slightly different, but at the high school they are a 3-week minimum grading period. So grades are supposed to be in every 3 weeks at a minimum. That's to allow some time for teachers to grade, do some reassessment, and get those in. And so we have been working with our teachers to make sure that they're hitting those deadlines. At the high school right now, they're every 3 weeks we do those grade checks. For sports, it's at 6 weeks. What happened with fall is we moved it a little bit ahead because otherwise most of our fall sports are kind of done by the time that 6-week period comes. So then there's no grade check to check them for their sport. So it was about 4 weeks in. So there wasn't a ton of grades in that grade book. And so I think what you're referring to is some classes only had 1 grade as we check that, right? And so we're working on ways to eliminate that problem as we work through first trimester. It shouldn't be a problem in second and third trimester when we get to the 6 weeks instead of that 4-week grade part for sports.
Is this challenge different this year than it has been previous years, or has this always been kind of?
We are really updating and changing our athletic and activities policy, so really adhering to what's in there. And so I think it was just a change for our students because in the past it hasn't been as tight. Like we see the F and now you're out and you're going to be out for the week to they have to spend an hour for that week in tutoring to improve their grade, and then they go to practice for the second hour because we know that practice is also important for those coaches, but really to give them that support to improve that grade during that week.
Okay. Thanks for the information.
Yep.
And so that communication is an ongoing thing that we're working on and helping our students. So in the years past, we've talked a lot about standards-based grading, and one of the things with standards-based grading is that you do get the opportunity to do some more learning and to reassess or to take that assessment again. But that still means when we're communicating about where a child is at any given point, that we're telling the family and the child at this point, you're not where you're supposed to be. So that's kind of a tough piece, right? And at the same time, we have some other work that we need to do to ensure that we have the best assessments in there possible. So there's kind of a double some different areas of work and challenge around grading. So Skyward is where those grades are that you're talking about and that are updated every 3 weeks. This is what, so again, the parent can get into this view by going to the brf.org, click on Skyward, and then you get this view for try one of how that student is performing in the course. So this is like the global view, and then each thing that's blue on there, you can click in and you can get more information. So this view, I'm seeing where that student is on each of the standards within that course, and then below you see where it says responsible and respectful, and there's a S for sometimes, an O for often. That's telling me that how that student is, what they're doing in the course, like their work ethic, those really important skills to future employment. And also, like this is the same student in the previous one that had those late assignments, right? So that's why that S is there. There's sometimes things not getting turned in on time. So that's a real accurate reflection of where that student's at. And then just back on that last, I'm sorry, I thought maybe I had one more layer. There's one, you can go in one more and then you can see the individual, or like you can see what the individual events are. So the blue ones are the different like assignments or quizzes or tests that is creating the grade on the standard.
Are you able to tell if a student has made the decision to try to re-master a skill, to retake, like, is there any sort of...
What on this one, I don't have there is a place, you see where there's a note that we can put in, but I don't know how successful we've been at really communicating that, where I can guarantee you that every teacher in every course is doing that every time.
Okay.
So that's something that we're working on so that you can see when that reassessment, because as a parent, isn't that great to see, like, you took responsibility and initiative and you did, and then you can reinforce that. Or vice versa, your child might say, to you, yeah, I went in for the reassessment, I tried to reassess, but perhaps they did not. That is also a potential communication point. And so then on the next slide, I just wanted to share, where I was talking about those S's, those R's, and those O's around student like behavior or citizenship, or how we are as a student. This is how they get to those grades. So they're infinitely consistently approaching some understanding, limited understanding, and no evidence. Excuse me, I misspoke. So that's how those 4, 3, 2, and 1s, what they mean.
Nicole, I just need some clarification because I'm not in the Canvas or Skyward, but I've heard moms say, and just last week I had a parent say to me, well, why isn't my kid's grade in there? And she reached out to the teacher, but I don't know the response back. Right. But sometimes, are you saying that teachers do it like every 3 weeks will go in and update?
So the guidance is as soon as possible. Like we want that in there as soon as possible, at minimum every 3 weeks. And so that is also something that we're working on to ensure that that is happening as close to the assessment as possible, because that's best practice, right? You want to know as soon as possible.
Especially if the kid is saying I did it and the parent is looking and there's no
and they're
grade.
Trying to support the, exactly, and that's
and
so
I have 100 essays to correct, right?
Yeah.
And so sometimes time is a
right.
factor, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That, and in fact, just to add one piece to the whole grading thing, the high school talked to you last spring about the Tiger Pass system. Kids are caring a lot more about absences and grades than they have prior to the Tiger Pass system. And so that is serving its purpose extremely well, at least for asking the questions, as opposed to not caring that those Fs are just hanging out there. So it has been a significant motivator for kids at the high school this year.
And our goal is to get more grades into that Skyward gradebook so parents are seeing that. So while we're working through our guaranteed and viable curriculum work that we've been doing, we're making more assessment plans with our departments so that that parents can see more checkpoints along the way, because we understand how frustrating it is to wait for that end of the unit summative assessment. We need to see more grades along the way so parents can check in with their children, right? And so as we work through that process of that guaranteed and viable curriculum, we're working on that assessment plan to add more pieces in.
I know that I heard a lot of that last year, and I was like, how can you, well, they said they turned it in, and I really have to believe that they did it, but they're not seeing it. And so, and then last week when it was said again, I was like, I'll have to ask about how that works. And
And I will say that one of the challenges for the teachers that we do hear about, so it's now the end of the unit and kids had late work, so I might have 50 of this assignment to give feedback on, and then I have this one random one from way long ago, right? That one sometimes is the last one that they correct because they, the kid already put it off.
Right.
So sometimes that is part of the delay as well, but it comes down to time and high expectations.
And I think it's also what Nicole's talking about, that difference between Canvas and Skyward. So what are you checking, right? Like it's hard on our parents, they have to check two systems, right? Canvas has all that formative work and those homework assignments in it so that they can see what they're doing on a daily basis or weekly, right? And Skyward's really that summative progress, like what that grade is gonna look like. So we know that that's frustrating to check both of them, but being able to access both is important.
Yeah. I think I should be a mediator. Then I could be telling, well, your kid is not here,
These are just some of that language about what we're looking for as far as students being responsible, respectful, and engaged. And then on the next slide, there's the high school rubric. And just sharing those grading periods that you're talking to when at the high school you can expect every 3 weeks. That are that Skyward to be updated, and then it's repeats, and this is in your packet. And it repeats for the middle school with the dates. And I don't know if there's one more slide. And then we also have the student success conferences. So that's another really important point where we can have conversations with families and really ensure that families are getting the access that they should have to these various systems, and explain one-on-one to some of those nuances and some of the troubleshooting that can happen. So you start forming that relationship, and then you can send the teacher the email and clear up some of those situations.
So the dates that were posted like 3 slides back, are those communicated out to the parents at the beginning of the year, or are they kind of kept as an administrative thing because it could be fluent, or?
I know as a parent that they are coming out in a newsletter.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive we put them in the newsletter in the beginning of the year, but I'll make sure that we add them back in too.
Yeah, I guess just a reminder as it's getting closer.
Yep, that's helpful information.
That is good.
Yeah.
There's usually, last year they did a social media post too. All grades have been updated so that anybody that's scrolling knows.
And I think they're doing that again too.
We still have the interns that are doing the marketing. That's nice.
And then some quick hints. Signing up for those emails for progress in Canvas is super helpful. And just the difference between the two platforms.
And something like that, Nicole, I mean, in some systems you can force people to say, I don't want it.
Yeah.
I mean,
good point.
Is that something where maybe we should just send it to parents and have them choose that they don't want to be inundated with the data?
I'll find out.
Okay.
I don't know how that works, but that's a
You
great
hear
question.
a lot of parents say that, look, I don't have enough visibility or I can't find, well, look, it's in your inbox, so you can
like
choose
that.
not to get it.
Thank you. Yeah.
But
Thank you. TCO update?
Not too much to add, but we do have an amazing group of motivated individuals who have been meeting and doing a lot of amazing things for our community. They had their monthly meeting last week. They also coordinated sales of homecoming gear at the elementary levels, and I believe last year they raised around $2,000 with that fundraiser alone, and so I'm highly confident that this year was as successful, if not more so than last year. They also walked in the homecoming parade to get their faces out there and to connect with the community that way. And then they also volunteered to run the concessions at the homecoming game, which is a way of helping out, but it also contributes a little bit of a fundraiser for the group. And we also have Culver's Night coming up on October 29th. And meetings will continue the third Wednesday of every week, and they have been meeting at the high school in the LMC as that location seems to be working out better for the group. So, and they do also plan to do the giving trees for the teachers, which we put out in the community last year, like at IGA, for example, and Walmart, so that the community can, if they're able, donate school supplies back to our teachers. And that was really successful, so they tell me they will be doing that again this year as well.
What's the participation leveling? Like how many people are pretty consistent?
Shelley, were you, Kim? Were you at the last meeting?
Yep.
Okay, 10-ish people, 15?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
10, okay. So, I think it's the beginning of the year and, they're just getting started, so hopefully we'll see those numbers go back up again, so.
There's nothing more on that. We are done with our world language portion. On to employment recommendations, as always, that was in your packet. And we do have to approve this because we have a professional resignation.
Correct. I'll make a motion to approve the employment recommendations.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Youth Art Month, we're gonna recognize Jen Dahl again.
Just wanted to highlight Jen Dahl. She received the Claire Flanagan Grand Award, and I of course had to tease her because she wins a lot of awards. I'm like, because you're on the top, does that mean that's the Grand Championship Award or what? And she just laughed about it. She really is so widely respected in the art education world. I don't know if everyone is aware, but this week, that Thursday and Friday where we don't have students, we are hosting at Black River Falls Middle School the Wisconsin Art Educators statewide convention is happening here in Black River, and Jen is pivotal in her state organization, national organization. She's held many offices in all of those places, and now she gets to go to a national conference and receive her Claire Flanagan Grand Award for her work with Youth Art Month in Wisconsin. So wanted to congratulate her. When we talk about some of our challenges in staffing, if you ask Jen Dahl, why do you drive from Mondovi every day for the last 20 years? And she will say, almost without, maybe someone else wants to quote her, she says, because this district lets me follow my dreams. You let me work and do amazing things with kids, and I get to do all this extra fun stuff that adds to me personally, and I get to give back. So we're very, very lucky to have her.
Okay, now we're on to the 8 series. We're up to our continuous improvement plans.
Sure. So I was hoping to take a little bit different approach to our fall data review, in that usually the principals come up and just kind of share the data with you, and that's the end of the conversation. I felt that when we asked all of them to talk about their attendance work in the buildings, that was far more helpful for you because you could hear what they were working on to help improve attendance, and then that generated ideas from some of you. Some of you reached out outside of that and said, hey, have you thought about this? So in the spirit of our fall assessment data, we're going to start with each building talking about, here's our baseline data, here's the goals that we set for the year, these are our action steps, and I also asked each building to not only tell you their action steps, but what is their communication plan, because I think it's important that families also know what our academic goals are for the year and culture climate goals, so that they can engage at whatever level is appropriate for them. So we've got one presentation and all, isn't that in there?
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's the I'm ready thing.
Yep.
Or
That was
there's
just there
another
for people's background information. The presentation would be great.
All right.
Thank you. I'm going to start with Mrs. Kirchner.
Hello, everybody. First time up here on the podium. All right, so I'm here to present to you for streets goals and our action steps and our communication plan. We're going to start with math. We have 4K goals, as well as kindergarten and first grade. Sometimes they'll be combined, sometimes they'll be 3 separate goals altogether. So the first goal is specifically for 4K. 80% of 4K students will identify the numbers 1 through 10 in random order and show the quantity for that number using our teaching strategies goal assessment. So you see the baseline is not up there, but I have it here. Currently 18% of our 4K students are meeting that goal, and our end of the year goal is 80%. Moving down in the goals column, by the end of this school year, 65% of kindergarten and first grade students will score at or above grade level on the iReady diagnostic. Our current baseline data is 18% of kindergarten students and 8% of first grade students. So our overall objective is to increase growth in our foundational math skills. And how are we going to do this? Well, our action steps are for 4K, we're going to implement daily math instruction. So that will be 15 minutes of a mini lesson with follow-up work. Kindergarten is going to continue the implementation of the Bridges curriculum and Number Corner. So they're currently starting year 2 of their curriculum. They really felt that going into year 2, they have a deeper understanding of how the program works. And they are much more familiar with it. They're going to use checkpoints, which are similar to summative assessments, and also workplaces, which are extensions of the main lesson. If you think about like station activities, they're similar to that. So first grade will calibrate around best practices through strengthening our PLC practices. So through math games and using manipulatives. This year they're using the iReady Pathways, which is an online learning opportunity that differentiates math instruction for each student. And we have Chelsea coming from CISA this year, who is going to be giving feedback on math instruction for our teachers. The last action step then is teachers will provide instruction on how to use manipulatives as problem-solving tools. For communication, we're going to communicate this to the community in our monthly newsletters, and each newsletter is going to have a grade level goal and the progress that each grade level is making towards that goal. For families, we're creating a pamphlet of these goals that are going to be shared during our student success conferences. And for staff, they'll be receiving a presentation during our staff meeting and also having conversation around these goals and action steps in their PLC. So our checkpoints at the end of each trimester will take some time to reflect on our goals and our action steps and how we're progressing through to meet our goals. Thank you. Moving forward then with our ELA goals, 80% of 4K students will produce the correct sound for 10 letters, according to our Teaching Strategies Gold assessment. And the baseline for that is currently 14%. So 14% of 4K students are currently doing that, and our end of the year goal will be 80%. For kindergarten and first grade, 70% of those students' composite scores will achieve benchmark or above according to our Aimswood Plus assessment. So for kindergarten right now, their baseline data is at 46% of students are achieving benchmark or above, and our goal by the end of the year is 70%. And for first grade students, right now the baseline is 33%. And again, the goal of first grade students is 70%. So the objective then is to increase achievement in our early literacy skills. We're going to do this by the 4K will be using the pre-kindergarten Haggerty curriculum after completing the early pre-kindergarten curriculum. So that's currently what they're using. And my 4K team reports that they usually finish that piece of the curriculum around January. And so they're gonna move right into that next piece and give our 4K learners that next step of rigor in Haggerty. 4K will also implement daily letter instruction. Again, a 15-minute mini lesson with follow-up work. Kindergarten is going to track the growth of letter sounds and the letter sound word fluency through the use of a data wall. So this is new for kindergarten, essentially using a Google Sheet to track all the kindergarten scores in one place, in which they can have some really nice conversations around the growth that those students are having. First grade will use differentiated reading fluency folders. They did this last year, but it started later in the year. And so we'd like to begin that earlier this year by November. And teachers will use Orton-Gillingham strategies such as the 3-part drill, dictation, and reading decodable texts. The communication plan is similar to that of math. Monthly newsletters with our goals and our progress, the pamphlets to families during student success conferences, and again during our staff meetings and PLC work. And our checkpoints will again be at the end of each trimester.
The parts that are same, you can just say they're the same.
Okay, am I talking too much?
No, it's great. This is what they're here for.
Okay. So our last goal then is focused around attendance. We're going to decrease the rate of chronic absenteeism from 31% to 25%, utilizing our EduClimber data. The objective then is to increase the regular attendance of our students and being at school full time. The action steps then, students, families, and our teachers are going to talk about a compact at the success conferences with a focus on attendance. So really they're going to talk about why attendance is important, and so everybody has a clear understanding of what our expectation is around attendance, and then everybody will sign that. We're going to establish monthly collaboration with Ho-Chungra, Sanpilo, and Western Dairyland, as well as our Forest Street 4K to discuss learning environments, our attendance goals, and other concerns that arise amongst all of our 4K locations. Teachers are going to complete an attendance check-in. So students who are absent more than 2 days per week, we're asking teachers to be that first line of intervention and make a phone call home to those families just to check in on their students. And then we're also going to put a family engagement bulletin board in our entryway where we'll display our attendance data, outreach events, put volunteer forms out there, and any other information we feel we can really draw families into our building with. So the communication plan is similar, and so are the checkpoints.
Any questions for Christina or the 4th Street team?
So those phone calls that have had to go out, has it been a lot of phone calls from an attendance standpoint already for the teachers, or is it?
So not yet. So now that we have entered into October is when we really start digging into the data. So family or teachers have now started in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
And there hasn't been too many phone calls to make home yet. Our secretaries do make calls home when students are absent every day, and so we are tracking those absences every day. But we really felt like teachers are that first step of intervention. They have that great relationship with their student and those families first, so we really want them to be reaching out as well. All right, thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Brandon. I'm talking a little bit about Red Creek. We have 4 buildings here, so you're going to see a lot of the same thing, and so I'll try and give some context to them, and you can kind of read them on your own. So for math goals, our first goal is 70% of students at Red Creek Elementary will meet their typical growth goal, 1 year's worth of growth throughout the course of the year. So that's goal number 1. So for math and reading, we're going to have 3 separate goals. They're going to match very similarly, as you see. By the end of this school year, 35% of students are going to meet their stretch goal. That is a lofty one, according to iReady, and I would have to go back and look at the exact percentage, but it's closer to like 20 to 25% of students nationally hit their stretch growth goal, and so we are, it's lofty, we're trying to do a little bit higher than what the national average is. End of the school year, 60% of students at Red Creek Elementary will be at or above grade level as measured by the iReady Math Screener. So I want to give a little bit of context to this part. Prior to, last year was the first year that we set a goal on achievement being a percentage of students at or above grade level. Prior to that, it's always been about growth, 20%. We want to grow by 20%, want to grow by 20%. We set our goal at 50%, and in both math and reading, we hit exactly 50%. And so that was the first time that our data had showed that 50% at or above. This year, message to the staff is we know that if we set our goals high, we are more likely to achieve it. We have now set it at 60% for this year. The baseline data, we want to get to 60%. We are at 12% to start the school year. Now, you just heard Ms. Kirchner talk a little bit about first grade achievement and where they ended last year. It's disappointing is not the right word, but it's hard to regrow students after what we call the summer slide. The example, so Red Creek is 4 grade levels, but example from 2nd grade. They were at 60% of students, our goal for this year, were at or above grade level at the end of the year last year. They came back as 3rd graders, 9%. So think of all that growth that you have to redo. So it's frustrating. And then here at our baseline, last year we ended at 50%, we're starting at 12. And so part of that is the iReady screener. It's a moving target. They expect you to grow over summer and learn. But it's something that is difficult, but we work through it and we do our best and set our goals high. Our objectives, largely based on fluency, and you'll see that in both math and reading. In math, that looks like facts, right? Addition and subtraction in the younger grades, multiplication and division in the higher grades. Our action steps, we're gonna unpack the standards and identify learning targets, create I can statements. This isn't new, we've done this, but we're more systematized. Over the last year, we have sat down, broken apart those standards that we have, and looked at forward exam heat maps. So over the course of the last, I think we had the last like 12 years of forward exam, and before that it was called the Badger test. We looked at the questions that are most likely to pop up on the next exam, and we have focused our instruction based on those standards. So while we have done that before, it is now systematized in a better fashion that we can continue to do over and over again. We're going to monitor students, pacing guides that are systematic across the grade level, and then we're going to use SMART goals for each unit. So the example that I'll give, the objectives up there are looking at fact fluency. Fourth grade, unit 2 is students will learn how to multiply. So it starts with 2-digit by 1-digit, goes to 3-digit by 1-digit, and then goes to 2-digit by 2-digit. The SMART goal for that unit is going to be students will be fluent in multiplication facts. So in other words, if you give 1 minute and 60 math problems, they can answer 40 of them. I'm making those numbers up, but the idea is fluency in multiplication will adhere to higher progress in multiplication across 3-digit by 1-digit, 2-digit by 2-digit. And you could say the same thing about addition of 3-digit plus 3-digit numbers in 3rd grade. If you work on the facts, make a goal around it, it's going to lead to higher achievement in the unit plan. Communication, we have our flyers, and at 3 o'clock yesterday, because I handed out the flyers to all the teachers to give out at conferences, and then I ran around at 3 o'clock today and grabbed one from each grade level and I left them on my desk. So I don't have the flyers, but I did plan on showing them to you. I'll see a few of you on Thursday night and you'll get your flyer then. But it has all of our goals inside of them and all of our guaranteed standards in order to share with families. Our checkpoints, trimester 1 and trimester 2, and then again at the end of the year, end of trimester 3. Reading, super similar. It's a little bit bolder and bigger at the bottom, but if you see our baseline of 26% of students are at or above grade level, in comparison to math, only 12% we're starting our year. Our goal is to 60. We're starting at 26 instead of lower like math and 12. So it tells us that our students are retaining a little bit more of their reading skill than their math skill over the summer when we start over.
Any hypotheses on why that is?
I mean, if I don't know this for sure, it's my hypothesis and I just made it up on the spot, but if you're going to sit down and do something with your kids at home, are you going to read them a book or are you going to bust out the math? Yeah. That's kind of...
Just curious, you talked about the summer slide and the gap and last year being successful and getting to 50%, right?
Yep.
Like, are you seeing that same, is the trend about the same from the prior year to getting to the 50?
Yes.
Yeah,
yep.
okay.
So,
all right, so
50% last year, 49 the year before that, 48 before that, and then prior to that we're at like 42.
Okay.
So, objectives, the same based on fluency, oral reading fluency, how many words can you read in a minute? Action steps, same idea, unpacking the standards using the Wisconsin board exam and heat maps. We also are starting a new reading curriculum in 3rd through 5th grade with our Wonders curriculum. So that's project in itself, taking on a new curriculum. There's a lot to it. Our teachers have to condense it, put it together in their minds in order to teach the students' minds. So there's a lot to that, but we're taking that on this year and we'll get better with it as the years pass. 2nd grade is also adding knowledge onto their CKLA curriculum as well. Under communication, pamphlets. Next. Thursday, get your pamphlets. And our checkpoints are end of semesters. So we also wanted to make a goal around culture and climate. Oh, I want to go back to communication of our goals. We have a data story that we're going to display on our TVs during student success conferences. Check them out in our cafeteria and then in our vestibule. They should be going to just have to figure out how to make it go on its own before Thursday, but we'll get there so they can check those out. All right, now we're ready. Culture and climate, we want to set a goal around that as well. Our goal is a 20% reduction in minor office discipline referrals. The idea behind that is if we can reduce the amount of minor behaviors, it will reduce the amount of major behaviors. The process when there is a minor behavior is if it happens, we document it. We don't necessarily tell the kid, hey, you're getting written up for this, but instead it's documentation for us so that we can collect the data on it, and then we reteach the student the proper expectation of it. And then the idea of that is to reduce the major ones. So each student will decrease the amount of ODRs, are the objectives. Students will make responsible, respectful, and safe choices throughout the building. Those are the objectives. Our action steps, yes?
Are you taking like data about each type of like incident and compiling it annually to see kind of what the trends are? Because I feel like there was a lot that came home around some certain behaviors last year that were kind of grave, and we're just wondering if you've kind of set aside specific like areas where you're focusing on that.
Sure. So we can segregate the data and see where most of them are, the location that they're having, the time of day, and the infraction that they're being coded under. To be honest, it's like 50% of all of them get coded under defiance and disrespect. Super, super broad, and so it's hard to break that down, but that's our most common thread of behaviors. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's helpful.
All right. So that's the Tiger way: respectful, responsible, safe, all the time. Action steps: we have to teach the expectations. When they're not followed, we reteach those expectations. Students just got done filling out a self-assessment survey, and then we'll follow those up to see if we have made any improvement based off of our Tier 1 and Tier 2 data, or Tier 1 and Tier 2 behavior instruction. Our social emotional learning instruction, positive action, is a universal thing that every teacher does within their own classrooms. Responsive classroom is very similarly, when I think of responsive classroom, I think of morning meeting. It's that time that you spend together. It goes hand in hand with the first 6 weeks of school, kind of like our first few days of being back in the building. It's all about community building and spending time together, making collaboration amongst all the students within your classroom. And you might not hit that math lesson for the day, but the idea behind responsive classroom and the first 6 weeks of school is you will make up all that time that you lost by the end of the year because everyone's willing to work together and there's less interruptions. We review weekly and monthly office discipline referral data. Our Tier 1 team meets monthly, so if you think of Tier 1 behavior, you can think of the big celebrations in the gym. Mr. Tiger's out there celebrating all the hey, we can do this stuff. Tier 2 meets on a 6-day rotation, and the Tier 2 team whittles down through that office discipline referral information. We have a data rule: 6 minors or 2 majors in a 20-day period triggers Tier 2 behavior instruction, which looks like usually a check-in, check-out chart, or possibly some other things as well. Communication, flyers, display. We're going to display our goals throughout the building. Frequent communications with family, positive communications home rather than always the negative, and then we will track these 3 times throughout the year at the trimester time. Can I answer any questions? Yes?
Are there flyers?
You get 2. We'll send you 2. Yes, it's part.
Yes, last year in elementary school, where you are the commander of Red Creek, we had 113 Native American students. Out of 113, 101 students are behind 1, 2, 3, 4 grade level only in mathematics, not English. Similarly, in the same school, we have 314 non-Native American, and out of 340 non-Native American students, 221 are behind 1, 2, 3, 4 grade levels. So recently, in last board meeting, we have created BLAST program because we got money.
Great money.
So I would like to visit that BLAST program after school in elementary. It is not in middle school as yet, in elementary. To see how many students attend that BLAST program. By the way, how many students attend?
Yep, average daily attendance is between 90 and 100, right around there. 100 students.
Beautiful, game over. Because these students which I mentioned who are behind, they are still there.
Some of them, if they signed up for it.
Yeah, they are still
We
there.
can't guarantee that the same 100 students at BLAST are the 100 students that are behind.
Yeah, so majority of them, they are still there, non-natives and also Native Americans. Those who are 1, 2, 3, 4 grade level behind, it means their flight is downward. It is a very dangerous situation. So among the all board member, I am the only teacher and taught 37 years. I did a couple of good miracles in my school district and they really appreciate it. So I would be visiting your school. I will be talking to Brett Dobb and Sherry Severson, see how they can arrange my visit after school, not during school.
We'd love to have you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You.
Hello, so the middle school, our math and our ELA goals are pretty similar as far as the way they're written. Increase the percentage of students scoring it proficient by 10% is measured by our fall, spring universal data. Additionally, 70% of the students will reach their individual growth goals on that same data. We'll check them in the first trimester. We checked them earlier this fall. We'll do it at trimester. We're going to do math in December and ELA in January, and then we'll go do it again in April at the end of the year. There's some baseline data up there for you. I thought you were coming to say hi.
Oh,
that would
I didn't know I had a fence there.
You can jump in. Go ahead. Right, you see our baseline data there. I didn't put percentages, I'm sorry about that. It's 19% for 6th grade, 29% and 24% for 8th grade are the students that were at proficiency levels, so we've got a little bit of work to do. Our objective, shift the student mindset in the importance of growing skills. We have heard numerous times that the middle school is just the middle school. It doesn't matter, it doesn't count, because you can still go to high school if you don't have passing grades, there's no credits. So we're trying to shift that mindset and the importance of why middle school is important. There's a study out there, I've read that 90% of the skills that you grow in middle school are the skills that you take to high school with you. So if you're not going to do your work and you're not going to pass your classes, not attend, basically that's going to follow you to the high school as well. Also create a culture of pride for success for both our students and our staff. Oftentimes it's cool for you not to do a great job in school. It's cool to be kind of the person that gets in trouble or doesn't get work turned in. We also had teachers and students will develop ownership towards their achievement scores by having a lot more conversations with students individually. And then with that individual goal setting for RI Ready, I was able to watch Amy Zanikar last year do this. It was really cool to watch, where they sit down and set goals with the students after the first RI Ready and say, hey, this is what we have, this is where we want to go. What are some of the skills that you can practice? What are some of the things that you can do to reach the goal that you're going to make? And then she did meet with them again in January and then again in April. And the celebrations that they got to do were pretty cool. So pretty good stuff, and we're going to do that now with all teachers for math and ELA in 6th, 7th, 8th grade. There's a form that we're going to be using that Amy and Sue's did it first, Amy's been doing it, but we're going to use the form that they use. So non-ELA and math teachers will be writing goal based on content-related standards aligning with our ELA and our math. So social studies will be writing goals this year in relation to ELA and math. Our communication parent newsletters, student emails to parents about their goals. So students will email their own parents saying, hey, this is what I got and I'm ready. This is the goal that I'm setting with my teacher. We're going to be sharing all our information at monthly staff meetings. We are hanging data sheets in school to talk about where are we at as a school as far as iReady proficiency, and also for behavior and attendance, and then grade level goal setting meetings where we're going to be creating goals by grade levels. So that's our math. ELA again is very, very similar to that. I guess some of our objectives are a little bit, but they're basically real similar. As far as our community goal, which is the next slide. We're going to increase the number of students that are at school by 90% of the time, are at school 90% of the time by 20%. Middle school, we fight and we struggle with attendance. It's difficult. It's just something we haven't figured out yet. While we sometimes think we get a hold of things and have some plans in place, we will do well for a while and then we kind of fall back off. We're also going to increase the number of major behaviorals by 10%, compared to the 23 and 24 data. Last year we had 1,257 major behavior documentations. So that's a lot of documentations. When I asked Chris yesterday, or actually last week, where we're at, we're on a trend to go a little higher. So we've got some work to do there too. I will say though, we've decreased our cell phone behavior documentations by 90% since last year. So that's working out pretty well for us. Team leads are going to create and communicate expectations to staff, which are laid out in a goal. So we created the goals as a GC, and we shared all those goals with our grade level teams. Teacher leaders will explain, teach, and communicate with the teams and model expectations. So we have behavior expectations for all areas in our building. So we set up a little round robin type thing where they get to hear everything. They've got behavior expectations for the commons, bathrooms, hallways, entering and exiting school, getting on and off the bus. All classrooms have common expectations that all teachers follow. Some add to that, but everybody has a common expectation. So those are taught and retaught when there's a need. They're being retaught on a daily basis for some students because we figure if they don't know exactly how it looks, then they don't know exactly how to act. We talked about things like code switching in the middle school, where behavior at home potentially is behavior that's accepted, where it's not at school, like putting your feet up on furniture or jumping over a chair to chase your brother, right? And so at school, it's not acceptable, but at home for some students it is. The way we talk, the way Mr. Norton talks in his garage is probably a little bit different than how he talks at school, right? So just understand that there are things that we do at home that aren't acceptable at school. We have to teach and we teach those expectations. So students will understand and demonstrate correct middle school expectations. And a lot of this is our PBIS is what helped us lay this out. So, the hats and hoods being off, voice volumes in the hallways, in the classrooms, no cell phones, so forth. These are just a couple of examples, Then peer observation to take place in the first trimester. So we have some things that we do with, we're having troubles with a student where we'll go in, we'll watch what's going on, what are the triggers, what are the behaviors, how often are they happening, in what settings, is it a transition, is it in large group instruction, or is it when they're working in small groups, so forth and so on. And that just gives us a little bit of information about this to try to help them. And then grade level teams, we're going to monitor students that have less than 90%. They do it every other Thursday. They're looking at, they pull it up in EduClimber, which one of our students have attendance is slipping, and they set goals for those students. For example, Dr. Severson is in ELA in 7th grade, and she's got 4 students that are under. She's going to pick those 4 students, say, these are the things that I'm going to do. I'll have lunch with them. I'm going to visit with them every morning. I'm going to make sure I call them by name when I see them, so forth and so on. So that we're trying to create that relation so they know that, hey, we really want to see you in school. And again, communication, parent newsletters, student emails to parents, monthly staff meetings, so forth and so on. So basic communications with the way we're doing it at school. The checkpoints aren't accurate. I apologize for that because we are checking in bi-weekly. We're checking with PBIS monthly and we are checking with attendance every other week. So that's not accurate. I'll fix that. I'm sorry.
Any questions for Mr. Norton?
Yes, I have a question for you. Last year in middle school we had 81 Native American students. 72 students were behind 1, 2, 3, 4 grade level out of 81 students in mathematics. Similarly, we have 236 non-Native American students. Out of them, 203 were behind 1, 2, 3, 4 grade levels. We created one ad hoc committee to meet with the middle school mathematics teachers. I showed up, but they both were sick. They left early. So we will be in the future, we will be meeting with you and mathematics teachers to come up with a plan and listen their plan, and so we could address to our board. This is an official ad hoc committee. We cannot slide that thing under the rug. It will remain intact. So would you folks cooperate with us?
We're very cooperative people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Let's listen to some more data, alrighty? So at the high school, we're really excited this year. This is the first year that we are giving an assessment more than just the spring assessment. So we can actually track some growth, and we've talked to you a little bit about that already. So our students in the grades 9 through 11th have already taken a ACT style test in a program called the Chalk Talk in the fall. And our goal until that spring state assessment is to grow those students in both math and English by 2 points. That might seem very small, but it's actually a big leap to get students to grow by 2 points in that ACT style test. If you see on there, our baseline data for our freshmen, sophomore, and juniors for that math score is down there, 14 for freshmen, 15 for sophomores, and 15 for juniors. The benchmark goal actually for the ACT for math is a 22 to say that you're college and career ready. Let's note that these are freshmen and sophomores too, right? Like they have years before they really need to take this ACT. And so we're really gonna work in these next 3 years to really grow that score for them. And then when you get to see the baseline data for the ELA, the English, that benchmark score is an 18. So when we get to that, we'll talk about that in a minute. But we're really just excited to track growth. Our students are going to have another shot at taking a test in the last part of November before they take it again in the spring, right? So they're going to have a chance to track their progress, take note in November about how well they're doing, and then create more plans to increase those scores by the spring. We're using a program called Chalk Talk right now in our advising. So every 9th, 10th, and 11th grader during advising each week has a lesson on a math, English, and then sometimes science and reading lesson to teach some of the skills that we're finding low skill levels in for our students. So the Chalk Talk program actually allows me to look at each skill within ELA and math, identify which ones our students are scoring the lowest in, and then they have lessons for us to reteach that skill. So we're taking each week to reteach those skills as we move forward throughout the year and making a plan with that. So far it's working really well, although TCO is going to help us do some incentives to make sure that our students are doing those practice problems, because really the more practice they can get with ACT style questions, the better they're going to do at that test in the spring. So they're going to get donut parties on Monday if their advising is the one with the highest percentage of practice. So we're working on that. And so our objectives really are to help students understand those scores, why it's important to care about the ACT and the pre-ACT, right? That's test score isn't just about a test score, it's also letting students know, are you ready for what's beyond high school? Are you college and career ready? It's a practice test for other tests like the ASVAB, if they're thinking about going into the military or other tech assessments that they're going to have to take. So it's a good tool so that they understand where they are. Our objectives are to make sure that teachers know how to talk about the test, right? All the different areas that students can use this test score for, not just for college or scholarships, and that they're communicating those test results. So our teachers in advising will sit down with their students because they're conferencing with them weekly, and they'll talk about their scores, the practice that they're doing, what their goals are to move forward. We're actually meeting with our CISA 4 partners tomorrow to look at that data and really hone in on our goals. So then just like the middle school, we're gonna have our students set those goals and email them home to their parents, right? So we have those individual meetings happening. We're looking at those test data within our guiding coalition and then within our PLC teams, and we're doing those Chalk Talk lessons.
I've talked about this in our newsletters that have gone out. We've talked about putting an insert in the sports program. We haven't done that yet. We want to look more at our data before we do that. And then using those amazing marketing interns to just put more things out on Facebook and our social media. So our next checkpoint is going to be October 28th. We're really going to review that first set of data that we already have. And then we'll check again January 20th after our next test in November, at the end of November, and then we'll check again once we get those actual ACT and pre-ACT scores back from the state in later April. So we're excited to be able to track that data over time and the growth of our students.
Kim, are the chalk talks, are they specific to how this individual performed, or is it more as a percentage of the grade level? You know,
so the individual practice is leveled to how well they did, and it'll pop questions in that they did or didn't do.
So your higher performers are still being pushed to learn more. And
absolutely. The lessons right now, I'm just picking the overall one that we have like the lowest skill in for right now. So that's what we're doing for the teaching part by our advising teachers.
Okay.
Kimberly, I don't have the data. I just brought elementary.
Next year you'll have it all for me.
Elementary, middle school. I just brought those. Those are the foundation of the school. Those students are coming to you. We want to make sure whatever we are sending to you, they have intact 1st to 8th grade knowledge in their mind. Yep. So they will not disappointed you. So since I don't
just so you know.
Since I don't have your data of a high school, but only I remember it clearly says high school fail. Not in your time. Please understand. Not in your time, it was someone else in their time. You took high school very later on in the stage when the things went very wrong. So it really says high school fail. And my question to you, right now somehow 8th grader will be have already come to high school and they're already 1, 2, 3 grade level behind. What do folks do with those folks? How they end up having a diploma?
We work really well with them, but we also work with the middle school, right? So we are doing a lot of vertical alignment right now. What are they teaching in middle school? What are we teaching in high school? And making sure that we're aligning things so kids aren't getting the same thing in middle school that they're getting in high school, right? Which also helps. So we're doing a lot of talking and communicating to make sure we're all on the same page.
Yeah. I teach Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Chemistry, Environmental Chemistry and Physics. And I'm very good at it. And I know these are high school subjects. These are not 2nd and 3rd grade. We are teaching them calculus. No, we just teach them 3 times 3 is 9. And we teach them the concept behind it. That why it become 9. So let's talk about ACT. This is American College Testing. It's only for the 11th grade. What you were talking about?
So the state of Wisconsin and ACT also has something called the pre-ACT Secure for those 9th and 10th graders. And that's the state testing that we give them. And it leads up to the ACT.
So 9th and 10th, they can practice.
Yep, but those scores still count for us, right, in the high school. And so we really want them in the spring to be doing their very best on that test as well.
Practice is very important because it could cause a nervousness on the 11th grade with ACD. Because it's a time pressure test. Those who are not IEP students will have no time pressure. They can take their time and finish the ACT. How much do we pay for 9th and 10th grade ACT test?
How much do we pay for the actual thing?
One student.
Or for one?
One student, $20?
We don't pay for the test. It's like a state contract to give it in the spring. We're paying for Chalk Talk right now, right, to give that practice and that assessment so that we can measure growth, but we don't pay per student for that test.
Okay, when I was there 15 years ago in high school in Black River, we used to pay $20 for each test.
And that's before the state said this is our test that all juniors will take, so we don't have to do that anymore. When I was in high school, I went to UW-Eau Claire on a Saturday and took the test and paid for it myself, right?
Yeah, 16, 15 years ago, you probably would be 14, I guess.
Appreciate that.
So I already test how much it costs for one student.
I couldn't.
You're asking the wrong person with the card.
Yeah, I have
Because
no
they are in
idea.
connection with all those schools,
I
as
have
you
to pull the
mentioned.
paper on my things, so.
I don't say numbers without looking them up first.
That's a question we'd have to look up. If you want that answer, we can look it up, but that's not something any of us have on the top of our heads.
No, it's okay, $20 maybe.
Well, I don't wanna make it up, that's what we're saying. So
Okay, okay.
say it.
Thank you, Kimberly. I really
No problem.
appreciate your struggle in high school. We will give you good students. You hang on to it.
I know they do. So, but we have one more goal. So
Good.
we have a goal. You have probably heard a lot about our students walking the halls, right? And so we have a goal about those in-school skippers to keep them out of the hallways and in the classroom. This is our climate goal. It was one that our guiding quotient really said, if we work on this, our test scores, our classroom engagement is going to increase because we have them in our classroom. Last year we had 435 skipped class EduClimber write-ups. Right now we are way down. I think that's because of Tiger Pass, as Dr. Severson mentioned to all of you. Kids care. They want to be in the classroom, and I don't care that it's because of Tiger Pass. I just like that they're in the classroom. They really find value in being able to have their own time at the end of the day if they're on that Tiger Pass. And so we're seeing a lot of students caring and talking about it. I had one kid came to me today, he was like, I think I have 2 tardies, like, can we look it up? And so we had to look up all of his attendance and we had a conversation. And he's just at 2 tardies, so he might still be able to be on Tiger Pass because they can get 2. But anyway, so they care. Right now the struggle that we're having with Tiger Pass is that all parents, and they should be able to, get to excuse their kids for 10 days during the school year. I'm not disagreeing with that. Parents should have that option and that right. Tiger Pass is also linked to leaving for lunch for our juniors and seniors. And so they have to be on Tiger Pass to be able to leave as a junior and a senior. Right now we have several families who are calling out their child for lunch who is not on Tiger Pass. Which is kind of reducing that accountability for that program that we started that is really working on our attendance and engagement. And so we're talking about, we don't normally take attendance for lunch. That's not something we do because it's lunch, but it's still part of our school day, right? Like our school day starts at 7:50, ends at 3:16. And we allow them through Tiger Pass to leave for lunch. And so we're talking about taking attendance for that lunch. So it's counting towards those 10 excuse days that the parents get to excuse their child for. So I'm just bringing this up now because I'd love your thoughts and ideas about possibly doing that, because I am sure that is one thing you guys would hear if we start taking attendance on that lunch period to count towards their 10 days. It's just something that we're finding to be the struggle right now. Kids who aren't on Tiger Pass are getting to leave anyway. Their friends see it, right? And so this program that's really working to help us reach all these goals is kind of hitting one of those snafus.
Just for the record, I asked, when Kim and I talked about this, I said, have you called those families and said, look, we are trying to increase the expectations for our kids. If they are passing all their classes, they have only 2 tardies, they don't have major discipline, that's how they get Tiger Pass. Do the parents know that they are letting their child lower the expectations that we've all agreed on? I was hoping that would convince those parents to say, you're right, never mind, they can stay in school until they earn Tiger Pass. That indeed is not the case. The parents have said, yes, I do know that we're lowering the expectations and we're okay with it. And that doesn't feel good.
So you're looking to,
I just am wondering, because you're going to get the comments, you're going to hear about it if we start taking attendance for lunch. And so I was just curious.
So parent could excuse them for 10 days, and after those 10 days, we'd say, sorry, those are your days.
I'm asking you as board members, because you're the ones that are going to hear about it. So your thoughts.
Is it 10 lunches? Is it 10, is each one, is it by the minute? Is it by the, how are you accumulating towards the 10? That's
what state statute says is a parent can excuse their child 10 times for any or no reason. It doesn't give you minutes, it doesn't give you days, it says, because the truancy statute says part or all of 5 days in a semester is what the truancy statute say.
So how does, we'll pick on Casey, right? Casey's mom calls him out, right? And him and I go to lunch together, but I'm on Tiger Pass. How do you reflect that differently in the software? So you're accounting for me as present on a Tiger Pass and him as absent because
So every student leaving our building has their ID and they scan out. So we would see you and you have a little sticker on your
Yep.
ID that actually, if you do an orange marker right now, it looks very similar to your sticker, but we're working on that. But you scan your ID, you're out, it's coded as you're out of the building as Tiger Pass. If we were to start marking them at using attendance during lunch, we'd have to have a spreadsheet to start, right? That would just track the student that is leaving for lunch, because our attendance hours are right now with fourth hour and we don't want to mark them out of their class. So it'd be more of a spreadsheet. And
the next question is, how many families are we talking about?
It's about 8, right, at this time, like under 10.
But will others catch on?
Yeah.
We don't know.
Are these all families with kids that can drive?
So they're all juniors and seniors, yeah,
Those are the
because
only ones that
freshmen and
open
sophomores
campus.
have to stay in the building.
Sure.
So I guess I have a question, like, have we asked the parents why they're leaving?
There's lots of reasons, right? Like they don't like school lunch, so they want to go home and eat lunch. Sometimes it's they have to grab Tylenol, or they want to grab a homework, or sometimes they just
There's a
want
parent that says,
Right.
I'm home for lunch.
Yeah.
They come home and we eat together.
So it's a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
I think there should be consequences, I'm sorry. Years ago there was, and then it got relaxed. And I think kids need consequences when the school has a standard to follow. And then and just lay it out, this is the consequences. You have 10 days that you can approve your kid to be gone, and after 10 days,
They're unexcused absences,
Yeah.
which could lead to truancy because
Correct.
you're letting your child go home during
Because-
lunch.
And you're saying 10 occurrences. I think there's a clear
And
difference
the
between
kid could
days
earn
and
Tiger
occurrences.
Pass, right? They could earn Tiger Pass and be able to go every single day. That's the part that I'm
Okay, wait.
challenged
So,
with.
I mean, maybe I don't understand that about Tiger Pass. I like pull Nora out. If she's having a rough day, I'll go have lunch with her, or
Yeah.
we'll go to
So
something.
Tiger Pass is just a high school
So-
thing.
Right. But I'm trying to understand.
Okay.
So Tiger Pass, if you don't miss days, how many days you have to not miss?
So to get on Tiger Pass, you have to be passing all of your classes. You can't have more than one major or minor edu-climber with no out-of-school suspension or in-school suspension. And then you can't have more than 2 tardies or more than 3 unexcused periods.
And
So that's our
every-
standard
every
to get
3
on.
weeks.
And every 3
Because then
weeks.
you reset that clock
Okay.
after 3 weeks.
Okay. Well, then-
So I didn't make it this 3 weeks, but I can work hard and fix it so the next, on week 4, I can earn it again.
Yep, so they always can earn it back, right? So we wanted it something that's short periods of time that then they can earn back.
I say take attendance.
so like when just going back to prior to you taking over as principal, and as laid back, no rules, you know.
I'm also rules are hard for me, but that's okay.
Remember times
I
never
was
know
a
rules.
rule follower, maybe as a Donald, I'm not, but anyways, I feel that kids have respected you more because you have put down the acts and said this is how it's going to be.
Do you want to talk to some of them for me?
I could
We're not
very
active
well.
in the beginning here, but anyway.
But I think as a parent, you know what you would want for your child. And expectations, I mean, kids need that discipline and they need the guidance. Because if we don't, we're just gonna get kids that are just doing whatever they want, and then what is our next generation? Crap. Just my words.
That was a lot of dramatic. And so every 3 weeks it resets, but a person could go with their kid if they're on the Tiger Pass.
Yeah, I mean, they can always call them out. I just want the ability to track that attendance, right? So I go to my husband goes to Red Creek to have lunch with our children, right? He would, and brings them out of the building, he would call them out and it would be counted against their attendance, right? Or possibly not.
And the scenario she's talking about, it's 5 days a week, they're calling their kid out for lunch. So it's they're their way to avoid the rules, is what it is.
And I think your question is, so if you and one of your children, although they're in high school yet, right? If you wanted to go to lunch with them and your kid was on Tiger Pass,
They could still go.
you would still go.
Yeah. As a junior and a senior. Freshmen and sophomores are supposed to stay on campus, but you can still take your kid out to a lunch.
Just not
And
10
I'm not speaking to me specifically, I was just trying to understand the logistics of who's going where and when and for
Yeah,
how
and
long.
it's the same kids, it's not, but we just don't want it to grow, right? Because we're finding that it's really working to hold kids to a high expectation that we want.
So I just mentioned to Kim that perhaps you wanted to be aware of this problem, because I believe when a parent feels we're now regulating them, they are likely to talk to all of you. So you approved the Tiger Pass system, you approved the conversations around higher expectations. We just wanted you to be a part of that discussion as well.
I think I'd be curious to see like what your intention is in the way that you're gonna track it.
Yeah, it's just
What
gonna be,
you like
I
to
think right
say.
now is a spreadsheet, right, that we would note how many hours that they're using for the lunch, right? And when attendance becomes a problem, that would be factored in.
So if they scan, do they actually scan out and then you keep track of?
They scan out of the building.
Their number is scanned. Are you able to grab that information from the scanner?
Yep, we can grab that from our attendance like system, right? Whoever has scanned out of the building. And actually, we make them have their ID card. So if they don't have their ID card that day, they get to stay, because then they can't sign out of the building. So it's also teaching them responsibility to carry their IDs with them now. So.
Do you feel like you had enough direction from the group?
Thank you. Sorry, that was a tangent on our goals, but any questions about our goals?
Is there any, I'm just curious, you know, you don't really talk about your seniors and graduation rates. I mean, is there a reason that that's not part of the goals, or is that just because that's like what we're all here for?
I think we were more focused on this as a way to get our students to graduation. We see many of our students that spend a lot of time in the hallway as the students that end up not able to graduate because they haven't been in classrooms to earn that credit. So we saw this as a more tangible thing that we could do to improve those graduation
Treat
rates.
the symptom, not the problem at the end, right?
Yeah, lead versus lag measures.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. All right, there's nothing else on continuous improvement. We are on to summer school programming.
So we shared with you the report that's filed with the state, as we've talked about. The summer school minutes that are accrued throughout the summer through all of our programming, and that's part of why we shared with you the last spreadsheet that's got all of those classes that are offered. The high school ones are all credit recovery, those earlier ones up there. And then you can see lots of other enrichment type activities that happen other times during the summer. Ariel Hall was our summer school coordinator this year. She tried to do something different in the organizational structure for elementary, and it resulted in a lot fewer parents taking advantage of that opportunity. So she is no longer an employee of the district. We will post that position and see who is interested in doing summer school coordination. In the past, we would do like a whole week, and we had a lot more elementary parents that would sign up for a whole week because it was very easy for childcare for them in that way. Ariel, through the best of intentions, tried like a slot here for this class and a slot here for this class, and it became very onerous on parents for transportation because it wasn't like for a whole day, it was like little bits of time. So tried, didn't go fantastic, and so we'll do something different next year. But just wanted to share with you, there's also, I said it was remediation, but also we have some high school band, we have FFA, those happen every summer as well. Swim lessons, weight room, lifeguard training, all of that stuff is also all part of that.
Any questions? We do not need to approve that state report, right?
It's been submitted on behalf of the district, so you're aware.
All right, next is 8.4, the long-range student success plan.
So you have this year packet, and I don't think I'll go through goal by goal and point by point of the plan, but I'll just talk a little bit about the process and what this is all about. So I need your approval of the plan. And so hopefully you have time to review all of it. So we go through a process where we assemble a committee. I think they're listed here. And we started this over a year ago with that group of people. And then we go through, if you scroll down a little, there's like this picture of all these different circles right here. So we go through an assessment that's based on each pieces of the pie of what it looks like to have strong programming for your libraries, your school libraries, and your technology plan. And so we look at each one of those pieces with a group of people. There's teachers, administrators, Peggy was there as our former ME tech director. And we also have Kay Henriksen, who we work with, she comes from CISA 4. So we partner with CISA 4 for the oversight of our libraries, and I meet with her extensively to talk about that programming. And so a lot of what you'll see in the goals, if we just want to kind of keep flipping through, just the overview, after doing that assessment, we just looked at developing goals to be having our library spaces, places to help ready students for the future. So an example of that would be we purchased VR glasses for each of the schools so that a classroom teacher could check out a classroom set of VR glasses and they could visit a museum, say like the Louvre in Paris, or a college visit at the high school level. And so that will be, we're working on implementing that. We've done some other things with VR through that type of programming. And the other thing that we're really focused on is ensuring that we want to use there's different, like they talk about Sora, Badgering, Destiny Discover, these other types of software that we can use to improve engagement with our students in the libraries, that they're reading books. So we want technology, but we also want kids with books in their hands and reading them. And through those resources, there's also like the online books and digital resources and audiobooks that we can have students have access to. And so those are kind of like the big overview kind of thoughts around this plan. And there's different ideas and things that we're working through. I don't know if you have any questions or thoughts. Yes?
Yes, Selvan. We were having a boardwalk in August.
Yes.
I think so, August, a few months ago. In high school library, we just passed by to go in different class. Books there are no more books anymore. But when I go high school, Toma, thousands of books, they're LMC. Middle school, Toma, thousands of books and brand new books. So I like it that you want to increase the books, let the student have a feel of it. I mean, we also encourage they can read on internet as well as sometimes to have a feel of it, sit down in one corner and have a study about it. So you think so? We have enough books in high school, Black River Falls?
I know that we have a strategic plan where we are going through, we have just weeded out a bunch of books, so we take books out of circulation that aren't being checked out, or there's a whole rubric of reasons why you would weed out a book at the high school library. And so we've done extensive work with ensuring that the books that are in there are books that are up to date and like engaging, and also like information across the curriculum, that there's lots of resources in there. So I feel pretty confident in our library resources at that point based on that planning and that work. And we order more every year, like it's a continual, like we never stop. We're continually all year long ordering for each library in the district.
Yes.
And so we order from lists that are like, they're maintained by different organizations, as far as like we get like what are the newer books that are coming out, so we're always getting all the new fiction books or nonfiction. That's the information that I really have on
Thank
that.
you.
Any other questions?
Thank you asked for us to approve the plan.
Yes, I need approval.
So I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Approve.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Monthly expenditures, as always, it's in your packet. And as always, looking for,
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
all those in favor?
Discussion?
Yep, go ahead.
For monthly expenditure, I have a few questions.
Okay.
Jill, would you please explain these highlighted money?
Well, I probably have to look them up.
If you have to do a lot of digging, we can also
Yeah,
get
I
back
will.
to them.
I mean,
So if you have questions on those expenses, if you just let Jill know ahead of time, then she can do some digging, because she's gotta look up each one of those.
I'll have to look up
Either
the
the budget
invoices.
center or the
Okay.
vendor or whatever they
Okay.
are. I don't know what your questions are, but it would have to be live lookup right
Actually, it's
now.
not my questions. The people are asking me where this money goes.
You just need to pass it on to Jill. Pass the
This
question.
is our monthly health insurance bill. That one's easy.
$300,000, right?
Yes.
And there is a golf. People are playing golf. Are students?
We do have a golf team, yeah.
Right, we have the golf team.
Sectionals
Male
this
and
year.
female.
Yeah, not our teachers.
No, our teachers are not going on golf trips.
Yeah, the students, right? We pay for them.
Of
This
course we do.
chiropractic charge is for our bus drivers. They have to go get their FedMed cards and,
Beautiful.
Get-
I
yep.
like it.
but yeah, that's for. But this first one I'd have to look up. Department of Revenue, it says right below it what it is. It's state taxes payable, so taxes we've withheld from paychecks. They've sent into the
So we
state.
pay to the state government, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of these couple of these other ones I'll have to look up. And Scholze, that is what we've spent on, if our maintenance crew is going there to pick up things. Or the high school tech ed department might go get some things, so. But these other two I'd have to look up.
Thanks.
Okay, yep, I can do that.
Anything further? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. School forest update?
The city of Black River Falls had a second city council meeting this past Wednesday. At that meeting, they had some discussion about the piece of land that is the school forest. The majority of them believed that there was never a future benefit to the city as the land isn't adjacent to them. They could not imagine a time when this piece of property up in Brockway would be helpful to the city. They moved and approved to gift their portion of the land to the district as well. So if you remember, there was 4 municipalities, Brockway, Albion, Adams, and the city. 3 of the 4 have decided that they would like to transfer ownership to the district, and we're just waiting on a conversation with Brockway. So it was affirmed by somebody on the city council who is heavily involved in county forestry that I think his words were about 40% of county land has a gate at the entry point. And so they reaffirmed what we had been told previously, that it is not unlawful for that gate to exist there.
So it says, unless the board is directed me to change the direction, your words. So I file a motion to get rid of the gate just because, anybody second, so we could have a discussion.
Well, are you finished you can finish your motion.
Yeah, just because this letter of intent to file a lawsuit, we have already so many lawsuits on our basket, we cannot add one more over one tiny gate.
So you're suggesting because somebody threatened that we should...
It's not about threat, it is about First Amendment, Second Amendment. Letter of intent means
Means they haven't done anything.
yeah, it means diffuse the situation before it goes to the court. Lot of money taxpayer will pay to come to a conclusion within a 1 year or maybe 7-8 months. Therefore, I file a motion to get rid of gate and provide us, whole board, provide us the permit for the gate, restrooms, and the classroom in the forest. Where are those permits? And where is the certificate that they have done after every 3 year septic cleaning of the restroom? So I file a motion. Anybody second?
I'll second, just to have the discussion about pumping.
Okay, so that's not privately owned wastewater waste treatment system. It's not applicable.
So it's not private. Do we have a
It's
permit?
not POWTS.
Okay. Do we have a permit to establish a restroom into a forest?
We have a land use agreement, yes.
So is it okay if I could see those documents?
For sure, stop in, let me know, make an appointment.
Okay.
Or I can scan them in and send them to you. for
Yeah,
sure.
scan.
You're gonna need, I have a folder this thick, you're gonna have to be specific about what you want.
Yeah, I would like to see the permit of that restroom.
We do not have. Finish your list.
Yeah, and then I would like to see a permit. The gate has been installed, which stop the access of people on the wheelchair. It says here, we don't break laws. We are good people.
We are not breaking the law by having that gate.
And I have also visited other section of forest for several hours. They have so many gates. Outside of the gates, laws are written why it is placed. And in our gate, there is nothing is placed. There is no law is written.
Right, we took the sign down to be in compliance.
And then other gates I see, and they also explain on the board that why this gate is installed here.
Yeah.
And who can enter with vehicle? There are certain officers, maybe of forest people or whoever. They have their own vehicles or trucks or whatever. They can go through it. Not us, not the public. Only the officer of that institution. So I would say we must diffuse the situation before it go in the court, until we get approval from all 4 municipalities in written that this 40 acres belongs to the Black River Falls School District. Right now, people believe in these are the laws, Second Amendment, right to bear arms. Not in the school
We took
jurisdiction.
that signage down, Iftikhar. There is nothing right now prohibiting people from hunting on that land.
can
I even
walk-
had
you
a
can
visitor
walk
who
on.
happened to come in the same day as the city council meeting, who came to ask me permission to hunt on the land. And my words to that person were, we do not have the right to regulate hunting on that land. Good luck to you, be safe and have fun. That was the conversation. So please don't present that information as if we haven't made adjustments, because we have. It was unlawful for us to regulate hunting. As soon as we learned that, we fixed it. So just be factual. We have not posted, yes, people can go hunting there if that's what they would like to do.
Okay, so that has been diffused.
This board, yes,
Yeah.
we've talked about this
So
for months.
people, yeah, I remember. So people could do hunting.
Yes.
What about the access for the people who are on the wheelchair?
Forests do not have to be ADA accessible. There is nothing that you will find that says a forest needs to be ADA accessible.
That is a good information. I did not know.
Okay.
Because I have no access to our attorney.
Yeah, you also don't believe me when I say it, Iftikhar, so it is irrelevant whether I say it or I give it to you. You never, it's all good.
No, I never had attorney access of our school, because this is the public information right now. How many lawsuits already we have in our basket?
This is not something that we talk about in open session. We've had a closed session where we have talked about litigation.
All our lawsuits are public information, or not?
No, ongoing lawsuits are closed session matters.
Are closed, but it is not in the public.
Because we're protected by attorney-client privilege, just like any other client.
Okay, so this is my argument. Save every dollar. We should not go in the court of law.
Okay. Further discussion?
None, let's vote.
All right. All those in favor of the motion before the board? Okay. All those opposed? Aye. So nothing changes.
What did you say?
You just oppose your own motion.
No, I am against the gate and all those things.
Okay, so your motion was to remove the gate.
Yes.
Okay.
Then you should
So
vote yes.
So you voted yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll vote again. All those in favor of removing the gate, etc.?
Yes.
All those opposed?
Aye.
You oppose or not oppose? Nick Hellstead, you are the big hunter.
I like to walk where I go hunting because you don't scare the critters away. When you drive in there, you know, because that's how if you want to be successful.
So you are with me or with them?
No, I leave the gate there.
Leave the gate there? Okay.
I recorded 1-4, so I'm assuming 6 again this time? Okay. All right, next is the policy committee update. So we're going with Neola now and talk about the changes to the process.
Yeah, so I just wanted to update everyone. We went from having quarterly policy committee meetings in July when the board moved to transition to Neola. We talked about the fact that we start from all new policies. So they have a couple hundred templates, and my job is to work with our Neola rep, Dave Lane, and go through all of their policies, line them up next to our policies, and make recommendations for the board. Really good stuff is what I'm saying. A lot of policy work. We set our first appointment, we're gonna go through the bylaws and the administration. And he said that's gonna be about 4 hours of the two of us together, and if I do my homework beforehand. He said he has some districts that wait until the end of the year when they've gone through all of the policies and they pull their policy committee together and they start reading through all of those before they make them live. So through Neola, there will be a link on our website to all of our policies. They don't usually make that website live until all of the policies have been reviewed. I didn't think, you tell me, but I didn't think you would appreciate 300 policies in June. I felt like perhaps you would like to be approving them in chunks throughout the year. And we have our first 2 meetings scheduled, one in November, one in December, to start pecking away at them. Would you like to approve them? Have a policy committee meeting to approve that first, like we have our 100 series, 200 series, 300 series. We're talking the first 2 series to go through them. Do you want to approve them knowing that they're not going to go live on the website until the end of the year? Like you could approve them with an active date of whatever that date is. And it makes sense that if you're making any changes, we wouldn't want to make too many drastic changes in the middle of the school year, right? Because we started the year with our current policies on the website. I'm asking you what you would like. We can wait until spring and just dive deep, or
what is the time frame once you've reviewed them all that we need to approve them by?
it's whenever you want them to go live, because we have a full set of policies.
Right.
And so it's when you want them replaced with the Neola.
I'm sure we're still talking about the folks that are part of the policy committee.
And so that's the other part. So this board has operated with a policy committee for years, but that's been a few policies each of the 4 times.
We traditionally, we've met 4 times a year, right, once a quarter, and we average probably 6 policies.
I was gonna say 10 to 12. It depends if they're easy little
depends,
changes or if
we
they're
delete some,
substantive changes.
So we're going from 6 to 300?
Well, by the end of the year, there will be about 300-400, but some of them are gonna be like just exact same content as we currently have. Like our district organizational chart. I don't think there's gonna be any significant changes to it. It's just gonna be in a new format, so it's on the Neola format. So he said you would still be able to clearly see this writing is a difference from what your past policy said. So you would at least be able to identify changes as opposed to.
Like redlined or
So we break it up so members of the policy committee meet with you and do little chunks along the way and then meet as a group?
Absolutely, could do that. That's what I'm asking, what you would like to do.
So I think we're basically the folks that are on the policy committee. Shred, Iftikhar, Jeanette, I mean.
Iftikhar's not.
No, it's just Jeanette and I.
Michaela, sorry.
Michaela.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Michaela.
Yep.
We do have 3 board members, I'm
So-
sorry.
I'd like to hear
And then we
from
have
you
2
three.
community
We haven't met.
members.
Right.
How do you feel about it?
Yeah, but I wouldn't be able to do 300 in one shot. I would say, can we just
No.
divide it up into chunks and then each take chunks?
And to be clear, we get, so much like this meeting, right, we get everything ahead of time.
Yeah.
And, and we could, whatever we can get to everyone a week or more in advance is what we would get through, and we get through the amount we get through in a meeting, and then we forward that to the board, full board for approval. And, go ahead.
I just wanna make sure, so the policy committee would not be dissolved, correct?
I don't think
Because
it
you
should
have
be
to-
long-term for sure, and so we're trying to figure out what its function is this year.
Doesn't DEI say that we need to, that is a committee that should be standing?
Boards must adopt board policy, whether you choose to do that as a committee of the whole or a separate committee is always a local decision. But your responsibility is policy leadership, for sure. So board must approve board policy, or it wouldn't be board policy, but
Boards
how
that-
you choose to do it is your choice.
Boards that have fewer, we're definitely a policy heavy district, if you look at our website, and there's districts that have way more. Districts that are less policy heavy, that kind of have to meet only the minimum standards. From what I've seen, when I've talked to other board members, they just don't seem to have a policy subcommittee, because there's fewer policies to review, so.
But we could, as you suggested, so November 14th is the first meeting, I should have a chunk of policies that he and I have finished after that meeting, and then we could schedule a policy committee meeting for December. You could get through as many of those as you can, right? And then we have a 5-hour meeting scheduled in December to go through policy. So we could, right, it can go through the policy committee first and then to the board in chunks as we move forward, if that's what you prefer.
And we could start to build the board packet for the full board meeting earlier and get just the policies in there to give everyone plenty of time to read that, because that's very static stuff.
Especially if you've not read board policy before, they're wordy and
exciting and stuff.
Right,
I'm really excited about this
I'm gripping
project.
read, it's a gripping read.
So this initial load though is heavy this year.
Yeah,
correct?
but then it'll be great. It'll be
Following
great,
years,
yeah.
it'll-
Mhm.
This is
After that, we can get back into that cycle of a couple policies, 3-4 times a year that need updating.
This is just a good audit of our policies with legal counsel and ensuring, hiring on help to help get through those, because it's kind of your nights and weekends.
It's
work a
all good.
little bit.
It's all good. It will be
I
great
think
to have them all up to date.
I think something to consider for us is like for the 3 of you, as you take a look at this load, if the other 4 of us need to step up and help, so we don't want to delay the process for Shelley and any old folks. So if the rest of us need to step up and take on some pre-policy review, ourselves too, and then bring that to the bigger board. I think we got to take that feedback in after you guys have had a chance
Particularly in
to
this
look at it.
unique year,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yep. And as long as it's all legalese changes and nothing really substantive, it should be just a lot of reading and not a lot of discussion. And so hopefully it's fairly quick moving through. If there's any points of contention, obviously we'll have to highlight those, and we usually bring that forward to the full board as well. So. All right.
More questions?
No,
Okay.
I'm just ready to rock and roll.
Sounds like we need to schedule a policy subcommittee meeting.
I'm on it for December. I'm on it.
So November 14th, we're not going.
That's my meeting to go through them with him. I don't need everybody there wordsmithing with us. That would be painful for all
No, but
involved.
November 14th, you're meeting with him.
Yes.
For the first go around, and then
Yes.
we'll do this up. Okay.
Correct.
Just getting my dates right.
Yep.
Got it.
You have to look at
Oh, I'm gonna go the next month. Yeah, I'll go the next month.
All right, we have meeting minutes from September.
Make a motion to approve the meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? District admin report?
I just realized I didn't have it. I was gonna look at my little list that I keep all month, sorry. There's not much, I know that. Oh, we're good. It was add the gift of legacy trees, so I have nothing.
All right, any WSB or other conference or workshop attendance? All right. School board connection opportunities.
American Education Week is around the corner, early November. Student Success Conference is all day at the elementary on Thursday. If you want to go mingle, your choice. Can't think of anything else right now.
All right. Future agenda items.
Yes, I have one, maybe other folks have different. Policy about Fund 80.
Okay.
And I'd like to, can we look at some of the special ed stuff?
Yep.
I would like to do the IEPs.
Okay. What about IEP specifically?
I would like to discuss the process and and how teachers are educating themselves on which kids have IEPs and what the plan is.
Absolutely, and I would love for you guys to all better understand how complicated it sometimes is. I'm just feeling, Melanie, that for teachers knowing which students have an IEP is certainly not a significant problem because most teachers are part of those IEP meetings at the younger levels.
Yeah.
By the time you get to high school, that certainly gets different.
I understand how that operates.
But I'm wondering about the qualification process, the referral process, so that you understand
I
the
would like
legal
to
side.
discuss what I said, Shelley, because I've had parents discuss it with me, that when they get a call, that the child has been acting out, the parent asks, are you following their IEP? And the teacher says, I'm not aware that they had an IEP.
Can you tell me which grade level that happened in?
Middle school.
Okay.
But this has been an issue even in the elementary levels. And so I feel that we need to discuss that as a board, especially when it comes to IEPs with these kids, and how we can improve that process for teachers and for the student, because parents don't want to keep getting calls and then find out that they haven't done the plan that's in the IEP. And I can talk to you about it more.
Yep. Thank you. You had other special ed?
I just want to look a little bit at a state level as to what kind of frameworks the DPIs set forth and some of the, just kind of an initial kind of overview of all of it so that we can start to like really dig into as a district where we're sitting with those things and how we can look for ways for added support.
Sounds good.
Yeah, probably some like primer stuff on the IDEA laws or something.
Yeah.
We can put some background reading on the packet, things like that.
That'd be good.
Is the full board interested in accelerating a Fund 80 policy when we just talked about how we were going to handle policies for the rest of the year? Or is that a high priority right now, or is that falling into the rest of our policy work?
Where would that fall from a timing standpoint?
Probably not until finance, and when is finances is the 6,000s. We haven't scheduled that one yet, so it's probably looking like February.
Second half of the year. I mean, do you have any concern if that Fund 80 policy discussion doesn't happen until later this year?
Yeah, it will happen later.
So you're fine with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
It takes time to write the policy.
I just wanted to I was trying to gauge the sense of urgency.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I have one more future agenda.
Okay.
Today we had 3 or 4, 5 very aggressive public comment towards the board members. Public comment is for us. It's not for anybody else. And now I cannot go home and rewind and listen what they were saying because it is not recorded. Therefore, I would like to have a future agenda to revisit that voting. So we should have a recording so I can go home and listen once again what they are talking about. So I can address their concern to my superintendent.
So the topics that were just brought up are absolutely directly connected to the public comments that we heard.
But
tonight.
if
That's
it-
where
Yes, but if it comes from a board member to you, it has a different weight.
they literally just said it. They both said special
Yeah,
education.
Michaela and I were both very interested in addressing Dylan's complaint. And Michaela and I spoke about that prior to this meeting. It is something that we highly value, and we did ask for it to be on the agenda for next month. That's the best we can offer, as we don't function singularly, but rather as a board.
As a board.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if we used to record it. We don't record anymore.
Yeah, the
I
last-
would like to revisit
Yeah, the
what
last board, which is you and who else? Show of hands, you?
Not you guys.
We were.
No, you folks were not there.
Right, but so you all voted to.
No, I was against
the
it.
majority of the board.
Majority board voted to take off the public comment from recording, so if the car cannot listen once again. I want to listen 4 or 5 times to that grandmother. What she was talking about, she is so disappointed, wanted to move in and fix our community. I don't mind if anybody move in and help our community a better place. So that could be in a future agenda to have in recording.
You
So
want to revisit. You want
so
to revisit
I
the
can
decision.
revisit.
I got it. We'll add it with the training.
Just a quick question for Mr. Jar, with school board connection opportunities, Veterans Day, I'm assuming that will happen prior to our next school board meeting, so are you still doing stuff at the grade school?
Yep, that's correct. So I think it's the 11th. I keep saying it's the 12th, so I'm gonna check.
It's the 11th.
It's
The
11.
11th.
Seven
The
Monday.
11th, the elementary one begins at 8:45.
And the middle school, high school one's at 10.
Additionally, we'll have the coach on flag raising the Friday before.
If you guys would invite me to a calendar invite, I could share that with the board principals. If you share that information with me, I can send out invites for the board.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate those days, guys, and the efforts you put into putting them together. It's really a highlight of something that we do for the community, so thanks.
If there's nothing else, I move to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subpart 1 subpart C for the purpose of discussing administrative performance and for the purposes of reviewing an expulsion pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subpart 1 subpart F.
Make a motion.
I did.
Oh, I'll second that.
Thank you. And this is a roll call vote. Marty, if you would.
Amy Blackbeard.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Michaela Conlon-View. Here.
Yes or no?
Yes or no?
Casey Dees.
Yes.
Jeanette Simonson.
Yes.
Nick Elstead.
Yes.
Iftikhar Memon.
Yes.
And Brad Dobbs.
Yes. We are in closed session. The board will take a 5-minute recess.
Yes. 5 minutes, please give me.